Welcome to another episode of By the Numbers, likely to be the penultimate episode of the year. I think we've got one more in us before we close out. I'm your host, Richard Lewis. Joining me, as he always does, is the esports historian, Duncan Thorin Shields. We got Sammy D lurking, pressing some buttons and whatnot. And perhaps fittingly, as we sit down to record and broadcast this episode, it's going to be a filler episode, guys, because absolutely fuck all has happened. Currently, the Blast is trundling along, the World Finals, the last tournament of the year, and of course, full of dead teams and teams that can't be asked. So it's a perfect end to the year. Everyone's got fat, lazy, and bored, which certainly sums up my relationship with esports. How are you doing, Duncan?
Not bad. All things pretty decent. I will say though, actually, there's like a mini rant I could go on there, which I won't extend to, which basically just goes like this. It's what I've said on some of the past episodes. It's like when you're looking at these events and you saw this like actual like proper mini circuit of lands that we got to close the year on. We basically had the major into all these different lands. I mean, remember there was even that land that Gambit won, that fucking V4 one. Like there've actually been like a solid amount. Like every week, basically, there's almost been lands you can watch. The one thing that sucks though is somehow we've literally put the period where we've gone back to land play with like the least interesting period of the rosters. Literally, if you look at the entire year, this is the worst possible time. And also, I actually think in some ways, like I actually think low-key is robbing Na'Vi of this whole storyline that they're building into of like, is it their era? Look how incredible they are. Like, are they one of the greatest teams ever? Because I get the vibe, it's the same with everyone. Everyone is sort of looking at the other teams and being like, well, they're not going to beat them now. So, maybe the next Vitality team does. Maybe Robs goes to FaZe. Maybe G2 get, everyone's looking for the next roster before can really get hyped. And unfortunately, if you look at the timing, especially with all the things that are going on in certain European countries now, it's looking like we're going to go bully back online when we get those new fucking rosters, isn't it? Like, I don't want to watch some whack-ass last of the year with no fucking... well, maybe if it's Blast, I do want to watch it with no fans, but theoretically, I want to have a crowd and also. Like, if Gambit wins this now, yeah, great, they won a studio land, Richard. Like, it doesn't really help us with the narrative. And who have they beaten? Like, maybe Vitality team. Like, get the fuck out of my face. These teams aren't, what you want to see. In fact, I even think Vitality is the ultimate example. This Vitality team, the reason I don't buy that storyline, a lot of people are propagating of like, maybe they shouldn't make the roster moves. It's like, one, the roster move is clearly what is motivating these players. And two, they're still not the best team, for fuck's sake. Like, if they didn't make a roster move, in 3 months, they would just be like a gatekeeper again, wouldn't they? They'd be like the 7th best team or whatever. They'd be like a good team, but they wouldn't be the best. So, to me, like, unfortunately, the period where it's got back to the kind of Counterstrike I do like the environment, it's just not the right teams. Like, I'm finding it hard to get into some of these games, Rich. Like, because as you say, it's the dead angle is what's killing me. Like, Team Liquid's a great example. If I didn't know Team Liquid was changing roster, this is an interesting couple of weeks, up and down, can beat some teams. But it actually doesn't mean anything now that I know half these players are gone. Like, it just kind of fucking kills the story before it's even been born.
What's been interesting as well is watching the teams have like a positive reaction to that sort of terminal status, right? Like, I mean, in particular, Liquid are a good example. It's like, why couldn't you get your shit together before now?
I know.
Like, why?
Mate, it's the way, I think it was Elige had some tweet where it was sort of like, haha, dead team. It's like,
I know.
No, it is a dead team. Like, have you not seen your results all year? Like, the idea you're going to play with this meme, I don't even know why you're even doing that. Also, it's like, mate, I thought I actually had the low-key sleeper best roast of the week. It's just no one knows the context because they don't get the premise. When obviously everyone's now become aware these last few weeks, especially everyone's honed in on this Elige angle, right? That he's the sort of the Nico FaZe clan puppet master behind it all, right? So my joke is, we've done all these episodes where we're like imploring them, like, maybe we have to get rid of Elige, or what can he even do with the team? And then like the next day I saw that news, it was like, Elige is owner of Team Liquid. It's like, Team Liquid, you couldn't fuck it up any worse, could you? This is unreal, mate. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
We'll get into that in a second.
What's even going on?
First, I will do our shout out to the sponsors. Yeah, we've got a VPN sponsor. If you want a VPN, you want to get 74% off, go to nordvpn.com/RLS. And take advantage of that. And if you want to get yourself some peripherals or somebody else some peripherals, you can go to the Steel Series store, use the code Richard Lewis, all one word with no space, and get 10% off anything in the store. Let's just talk about what you alluded to, which is obviously Team Liquid just sort of signing their death warrant as a sort of free-form, viable, competitive CSGO team, and that is because it was announced yesterday or the day before, can't quite remember when, that Elige now actually has an ownership stake in Team Liquid, along with, it's got to be said as well, another player, Hungry Box, their Smash player. There's also certain celebrities who come in, have obviously done this, like, whip around. There's some other, there's like a poker player in there called Lex, and I think a voice actor, Asa Butterfield or something. So anyway, a bunch of people have all come in to get some equity of Team Liquid, which, spoiler, this is sort of happening constantly all the time in the background. It's not news in and of itself. Everyone wants a piece of an esports org, it seems. And people and esports orgs need people to throw money at them because, spoiler, we're still not at a place where anyone makes any money out of this stupid shit business. So, unless, of course, you're essentially scamming people, which a lot of people are. So, this new story comes out, it goes on Reddit, and then all of a sudden, the community are like, hang on a minute, Elige owning a bit of Team Liquid, isn't that...
Help me, help. As
Yeah,
though of all the people, as though the esports community, Richard, dared to ever invoke conflict of interest in a scene where me and you have just for like 5 years been like, that's a conflict of interest. And then they go, see, you're saying he is cheating. And you, how many hours of this? How many years of this? And then they're just like, wait a minute. Owning a team a bit, isn't that like a conflict? Why are you saying that? I've been telling you that for years. Listen, if you dumb motherfuckers were fine with NBK playing in a different team while contracted potentially to the team he would play against in a major world championship qualifier, then why you have a problem with this? At least this guy's still in the same team. Yeah, it's a conflict of interest. It's not even as bad as the NBK one. It's not as bad as that Fallen one I referenced. Still going to do that video. I've just been a bit lazy on it. Don't worry, boys. We'll get them on the end. No, what's mad about this one is, even though I don't particularly care about the conflict of interest angle in this sense, like, look, as you say, it's been happening already in esports, and people don't know. In League of Legends, this already happened with Bjergsen, who, funny enough, actually is one of the few people who gave it back to go to Team Liquid. It happened, actually, Cloud9 themselves at a similar time period, a couple of years, did it with a bunch of their players, like Sven Skjern, just there again. Riot made them give it back because nearly all those players are gone, etc. But what I'll say is this, is I think the angle people are missing is, I get why it's happening. It's another way to make, like, people you really want to lock down stay in your org, essentially. Because if people don't understand, the key detail that's always misunderstood about these stories is they don't get the ownership that day. Like, Elige can't really leave tomorrow and then just own, like, let's make up a random number, 1% of Team Liquid, right? What happens is, Elige, if he's going to get 1%, will get that 1% in, say, like 4 years, and it will vest over the years. So if he stays basically for his whole contract, that's probably when he gets the whole amount. And so it's essentially a clever way to lock him in, but just not for more money. But the only problem I have is this. There is a conflict of interest angle that I do worry about, which is, funnily enough, obvious to the Elige and Team Liquid, which is the reason I made the joke is, yeah, good luck firing him now when he owns the fucking team, a small percentage of it, and he's clearly, by the fact you gave him the ownership percentage, he's sort of been fucking green-lit as, like, he can do or say anything he wants. He's the golden child, isn't he? So all I'll say is, like, the joke is, if we were hoping someone was going to come in and sort of make a new era of Team Liquid where Elige could be the star player, but we're going to sort of, like, reduce some of his influence, we're going to figure out what was going on in the dynamic between him and all these teams. No, we're not going to do that, are we? Like, if anything, the Team Liquid org is sending a message, business as usual. In fact, maybe it's going to be even more fucking just dancing to Elige's jig.
Well, I mean, let's be real. This is exactly a sort of copy of the Arlu situation, and the difference is Elige's had Arlu status confirmed, unofficially conferred upon him prior to this. I mean, like, so it's funny because the top comment in the Reddit thread is saying, in an interview I did with Elige, Elige said it wasn't his team, which even as he said it to me, I was like,
I love that.
Yeah, I know. But, look, at the end of the day...
Look, it's not my team next year, Elige announced as owner of Team Liquid.
Yeah, no.
It's like this.
I know. It's so ridiculous. But anyway, I mean, look, the reality is this. It sort of is a conflict of interest, but I agree with you. It's not like any of the other conflict of interests we've highlighted. It just is a conflict of interest in the sense that Elige now sort of serves two masters. There's Elige the player, and he needs to dial in and focus on delivering good performances. But Elige the owner knows that he's essentially uncuttable and also wields a disproportionate amount of power over the other players in the team. I mean, like, if there was any doubt, by the way, that Elige is assembling the rosters over at Team Liquid, this should just put that, any speculation about that to bed. He is. He gets what he wants. Nitro's coming back. He wanted that. Imagine being so influential at a supposedly top tier esports organization that you can literally just say to them, I want to bring back a guy who essentially retired and has been playing another game for over a year because I like him. That, so
All the reason, yeah.
Yeah, there literally is no other reason. I mean, certainly we know when he left, he was playing his career worst form.
Yes.
In a team that had gone from being the best team in the world to being absolutely terrible. So there is no reason other than Elige likes him. So, I mean, you see this sort of story, come out. And for me, it does sort of make me worry a bit for the future of Team Liquid. I'll explain why. And then you can give your views on it. I just feel like, much like the Arlu situation, it creates a complication. There is now no chance Elige is going anywhere. I almost feel this was probably negotiated at the time when he was going, oh, well, I might have to go to Valorant, guys. Guess you'll bloody be losing one of the jewels in in his passive-aggressive way. And I think he probably said, if I do agree to stick around and give it another go in CS, I want the team that I want, and I want the fucking equity because I've been here for, all this time. And it's a shame because on paper, I don't hate players being rewarded with equity and ownership. I think the one thing players haven't really leveled up on the past 10 years is owning things. Remember when it was meant to be Astralis, that was the player-owned organization. And, of course, that was all a scam and bullshit. And it was just to make you think that actually things were changing and players.
By the way, if you want to know how successful that campaign premise of that Astralis was a player-owned org is, first of all, you know this, it was only something like a year or two ago, people stopped even saying player-owned org. They used to always say that in follow-up to Astralis. And then secondly, Reddit is so bad at remembering details. They still, to this day, were like, but did Carrigan ever actually sell the shares? Like, no, you're still on that story from fucking 2016. He left in 2016. You're on that. People don't know how bad fans are. Fans really, Reddit is obviously the worst because it's by definition an echo chamber. But it's just it's genuinely someone said something once 5 years ago and it's just echoing around the empty brains of 1,000 people being repeated. But did he buy out? Like that thing the other day when on that episode 2 episodes ago, Richard, where it was well, you can't have booths because they're illegal in America because of fire. She's still repeating that from 2016. Fucking hell, guys, get some new material. Elite, we don't do every episode sort of Kiyashima horsehead joke. I just sprinkle those on 2 out of 10 or whatever, fucking keep it relevant, keep it fresh, callbacks. Was a big fan of Harry Hill, what can I tell you?
Yeah, but and there were people in the thread actually that were saying this isn't a conflict of interest at all.
In what way?
Well, they wouldn't elaborate on.
I'm assuming they're using the double lift logic, where his logic was, but how could it be a conflict now? I'm in the org. I want the org to win, and I'm in the org. It's like, listen, you dumb.
It can't be a conflict of interest because he's still at Team Liquid, so owning Team Liquid is okay. It couldn't create any issues, I imagine.
What I don't think they get is this. This is how dumb fans are. And I'm sure some of you, by the way, let's be real, some of you listening right now live probably are dumb enough. You're also going to learn as I tell you this. Think it through. What does the phrase mean? Conflict of interest. Well, let's go to the one that's the actual fucking interest there, right? What are the interests? What interests could someone have in a team? Well, in this case, Elige's interest is he's a pro player in Team Liquid CSGO, right? But now, as an owner, he has a separate interest. Not always. Sometimes it will be aligned. But sometimes his interest as an owner of Team Liquid could supersede his interest as a player. As in, it might actually genuinely benefit him to lose a game sometimes, or for a player to be cut for him, the overall team, that maybe he doesn't. So the problem there is you have a conflict between his two interests. So it doesn't matter that he's in the same org, guys. You haven't thought it through. Think about it logically, right? If the guy who's your co-worker remained your co-worker at your job, but tomorrow also owned the company, don't you think it would change how he would behave and how you would have to behave to him? Of course it would. It just makes logical sense. I get why people get lost on that one, though, because again, it's like I alluded to before. They don't get that. When you point out the problem with conflict of interest is you can have all these things we're speculating about happen, but they don't have to happen. They always get lost in, so are you saying they're happening or that they are going to cheat? It's like, no, the point is you set it up so that you can't know if these things are going to happen, and if they do, you can have incredibly disastrous results on the org. What I would say is this: my take on this particular topic is very similar to my current take on most of the superstar players in Counterstrike, like I had on Nico on Twitter. That's all people got mad salty about, right? I don't want it to be actually the world. This is where people get very lost. Because I critiqued Nico for doing all those obvious moves in FaZe Clan. That if you looked at it, they were just it had him written all over them. I even know fucking people in FaZe Clan. You think I never just asked people like, Guardian, were you in on that move? And they don't tell me yes or no. Of course they did, you dumb fucks. I'm not like you fans on forums. I actually have access. So basically, when Nico did all those moves, my problem isn't, by the way, that he did all the moves. My problem is that at the end, he rizzle-dizzled his way out and was like, I didn't do anything. Well, I'm just a player. Like, why do you blame me? It's like, no, I actually want you to accept responsibility. So if you're Elise, I'd say the same thing. Dude, if you want to pick the lineup, do it. But I tell you what, if we fail, you better accept the responsibility, though, and go, maybe I was wrong with this guy, or maybe I have a busted view on who my coach should be. The idea is, it's skin in the game. Like, if I'm the org order, I can come to you and go, why was this year off, Elise? Didn't you want, like, falling in the team? Wasn't Stewie supposed to be agile? I can ask you questions now, and also you're an order, so fuck, you're right in with thicker sleeves now, mate.
Really
We've got to succeed together.
It now. Yeah, you really have to justify it. I mean, like, the weird thing is, I would say as well, I mean, it feels like this is a way to anchor him to the org, essentially, it's not for whatever reason. It makes sense why Team Liquid obviously value him.
They want him to be the face of the org, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and let's be real, we criticize him a fair bit on this podcast, but we do it sort of on the basis of the fact that low key, he, unless everything's going right in Liquid, he's the sort of squeaky wheel, isn't he? Right,
yes.
and that's fine, because he is one of the greatest players to have ever touched the game, certainly in the North American region. But I feel like what they're doing here is, this is a way to stop him going somewhere else, a way to stop him pursuing other opportunities, and sort of like, now that it's your org too, makes total sense that you would want to stay and make it successful, right? So it's their way essentially of keeping him locked in. But yeah, very, very, just a ridiculous storyline. And it sort of does make me wonder about what's happening moving forward with Team Liquid. They still haven't confirmed the other signings as of yet.
It's the timing as well, where the timing was like this story and the NAF signing story were fairly close together as well. So it makes me feel like that those two maybe played a part, like the notion is, my message and I take from this is, one, it is Alicia's team. It's even essentially got the official stamp of approval. And two, NAF's in on that, and it's going to be the NAF and Elise show, and we're just going to rotate the other players.
Well, yeah, I've got a little bit of insight about that too. I mean, like, people might think that NAF wasn't ever in the evil geniuses for him as a result of this. Now, I can certainly tell you he got the bag to stay in Team Liquid.
Makes sense.
Like I think Elise was like, if we lose NAF, that's a huge blow to the project as it is, and I want him here, and NAF was certainly considering his options. Let's put it that way. I think he'd had a sort of verbal agreement he would go over to EG, not with the org necessarily, but with the other players that are going to be on that team. And then basically they've come in and sort of given him a huge, a really, really big contract, sort of even, by today's standards. So, fair play to NAF. He's definitely earned it. He's been probably one of the more consistent performers in that roster as everything's gone to shit. And also, he's someone much like Elise. These guys don't get into like scandals or tweet ridiculous things. They seem to be good sports when it comes to creating content. They offer their org value, right? So you understand why you want to, keep them around. And of course, obviously, it turns out they're phenomenal players. But yeah, Elise, an owner now, and just absolutely, you can't make this stuff up, Duncan. You can't. While we're talking about ownership, there was one little story that sort of flew under the radar that people didn't talk about too much, and that was the expansion of the ESL Pro League Louvre agreement. They have now brought in 3 additional teams after they said in an interview, they said they had over 40 applicants. And just so you know, if you haven't been following this story, to get in and be part of the ESL Pro League circuit and to be one of those Louvre agreement teams where there is, obviously you get a revenue share and all of that stuff. We're talking about a minimum sort of buy-in of $3 million, to sort of be part of this. So they've brought in Furia, Big, and Heroic. No real surprises there, although I was told that the Heroic one was sort of debated after all of the negativity around them.
Which is hilarious when you consider they were like the Pro League champions. Like, if you're ESL, I always thought this is one of those stories, again, that doesn't get brought up unless me and you bring it up, mate. To me, the big scandal of the last 2 years, I know everyone else like, lol, ESL won in the online era. ESL and Blast look like morons that Gambit and fucking Heroic were like two of the best teams in the world, but essentially because of the org size, not really like main primary people in your fucking league circuits. Like, I always thought that was like a low-key sleeper scandal. Like, these were the two best teams in the game. And so, like, listen, it's tough because this is kind of the same discussion that happened, if you remember, when Blast first went to the Premier format, where it's like, but why Complexity over Fnatic, if you remember, was the famous one back then. But like, Fnatic's a better team. It's like, yeah, but it's about the orgs, isn't it? It's about who you want to partner with. So I agree. The old Heroic, by the way, it was totally justified not to have them in. They were tiny fucking org that were paying fuck all money. Like I told you, you get like 7 or 8K a month last year. And look at all the fucking amateurish around their org. But the problem is the new ownership, and especially where the CSGO team is, they're so relevant. You look a bit silly if they're not in your org, like in your partnership agreements at that point in time.
Yeah, and you know, look, at the end of the day, I feel like these teams sort of do deserve.
Furia one's a no-brainer as well.
Yeah,
I mean, not
exactly.
just for how good they are, but again, the viewership that you're going to get from that's just a no-brainer, and you got to do it.
Yeah, and if I recall correctly, doesn't it put things right with Big? Because weren't Big one of the big name teams that got fucked over last time?
I'm not certain because I think they weren't. I think what happened was they were. I'll tell you that I'm not in that flashpoint, so I can tell you. As far as I remember, Richard, it went like this: they were one of the teams that was potentially on the outs for Pro League,
right?
But then they came and won the LAN qualifier for Flashpoint, if you remember. But then didn't compete because instead they chose to like not compete and they went back. And I believe that was one of those things where maybe they used that as leverage and magically they got like the EPL slot. I think was something like that, something along those lines.
Okay.
I might not be a Louvre agreement team though, again, because it was tiny org, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like whenever we talk about Big, it's one of the reasons why I never really chew them up so much on this show. They are very much a small org that punches well above its weight with the talent that they've been able to kind of farm, especially in a region where, let's be real, fucking unless the Germans are downloading something, they haven't really been relevant in CS for fucking ages. They were in Source a little bit, and obviously in 1.6 a bit. But yeah, in general, it's been a region that, despite having all of the benefits, it's never really thrown up a truly amazing side, not for a long, long time. And Big is the closest that it's got. And obviously, they cycle out their best players, historically. So I think they've done pretty well for themselves, all things considered. It's good to see them being involved. It's kind of interesting as well because there's like a number of dead teams, like dead orgs essentially, where we don't even know, what the future might hold. Like we're still scratching our head, wondering what's happening with, Complexity, for example, and sort of what value are they getting out of, being attached to this? Because it kind of feels like they don't even have a plan moving forward at this moment.
That's the part, isn't it?
Geniuses.
That's where this business side intersecting with esports will make fans mad potentially in the future. Because the problem is, here's the thing, right? When I said earlier that when they made the Blast Premier and they announced that Call was in, but Fnatic wasn't, at the time it was a scandal because Call had yet to have the performance. Because it was at Blast where they had the big LAN juggernaut performance. Meanwhile, if people remember, Fnatic was literally like a top 3 team in the world at the time. Every LAN they were like guaranteed top 4. But the problem people don't realize is, in the same way as you took the org then, because you think the org is more valuable, it means that it can go the other way. And I can tell you, anyone who follows Astralis and League of Legends knows this. The worst case scenario is when you do a deal with the org where the org makes sense, sometimes the org doesn't have to field a good team. So I'm actually concerned myself about the Complexity one. All the rumors that we've heard sound like they're just going to buy a cheap roster. They're going to min-max, basically. They're going to get a CIS squad, whatever it might be. You pay the minimum, or the Latin American team would be the obvious other one. You get the minimum payment that it costs you, but you try and max out and hope they're a dark horse team. Well, if that happens, again, if you're someone looking at the orgs, you're like, aren't they supposed to be the best teams in the world? It's like, no, it's just the best orgs in the world, mate. There's a big difference, actually, in CSGO, if you notice. Because actually, the weird thing about CSGO, because it's the open circuit, is we always have these teams like the Gambits, the Ences, the Bigs, the Heroics, that they on paper, the org shouldn't be able to compete, but in the game, they have a good enough team,
Yeah, it's kind of weird because obviously, when you look at all the PR stuff that's gone out around all of the teams associated with this league, obviously it's all particularly positive. But if I was a team, like, you know, we had this discussion around Flashpoint. If I'm a team and I'm doing my job and my team is out there and it's performing and we're doing our socials and we're getting all this value, and then I'm in some sort of agreement where, you know, a team opposite to me is getting all of the fringe benefits and the same revenue share, and their lineup's garbage, and they're clearly min-maxing, and they're hurting the overall viewership. You know, I'm gonna pipe up and say, like, guys, like, you know, it's great that we're bringing more people in. There's got to be a way to kick people out. You know, it was the one thing I liked about Flashpoint.
Carlos literally describes them in League of Legends. He does it in an interview I've got coming up. He literally just describes teams like that as parasites. Because as you're saying, you're in an ecosystem where you agree to share, and it's like a group project at uni. Everyone knows this analogy. No, there's always at least one cunt does absolutely nothing. But the whole premise is because it's trying to teach you, by the way, that is what projects are like when you work with multiple people. They get to get their share of the grade sometimes, depending on how it's judged at the end. Meanwhile, there might be one person who a mad swat that did all the fucking work, and essentially they just had to carry this fucker up the mountain like some Sherpa or something. So in this scenario, like, I agree. If I was these other teams, this is where the other teams that didn't join Flashpoint are dumb as fuck, Richard. Right? Okay, yeah, congratulations, you didn't join Flashpoint. Wow, you dodged a bullet there. Spoiler, morons. It could have actually succeeded if some of you had joined. But okay, you didn't join, great. You got ESL to give you a better deal. One, think it through what you just said. You got a better deal necessitated on Flashpoint existing. Two, if there isn't a Flashpoint in the future, you're not going to get any better deals. And how are you going to negotiate higher? What's your leverage point? I don't think they thought that far ahead. Sadly, there's the problem with Counterstrike. We're still in the scenario where they just look in the current upcoming year. They don't think like, where am I going to be in 5 years? Where am I going to be in 10 years in Counterstrike? Like, no one seems to put the actual thought into what, like, think about it. For every business, you have like a 5-year plan. You have a plan for like, what happens to the best case scenario? What would it do? They don't have a plan beyond this year with these fucking teams.
Yeah, so it's not a big story by any stretch of the imagination, but it consistently shows that, unfortunately, right now there really is only one place to be if you're a competing CS team, and that is you sort of have to be at the whims of ESL. I mean, even Blast, as we've seen, are a little bit beholden to ESL, and they have an uneasy alliance, which, again, spoiler, at the first sign of any weakness from Blast, ESL will absolutely ramp up the assault and put them down like they've done so many TOs before them. But yeah, you know, that's where they're at with that one. Not really a big story by any stretch of the imagination. ESL remains.
Yeah, you have to remember, guys, if fucking ESL is Sauron, then obviously Blast's just Saruman, isn't it? They're just like, no, look, you have to join with me, Gandalf. And then like, look, I have graced my fighting Urukai. They are almost human. I call them the Danish crowd of the Royal Arena. Look, that's their war cry. Shoot, skeet, or whatever. Like, scoot. I don't even know what it was.
Skeet.
I know. Skeet, what the fuck is that? Maybe there were also a lot of Little John fans in that audience. Who knows? I don't know. It could have been.
Yeah, you could have got it wrong.
Anyway. The windows, to the walls. No, it was the Yin Yang Twins one. I don't fucking know. Whatever. You know the song I'm talking about.
So anyway, yeah, the other thing that we've had going on is we've had a number of roster moves right at the end of the year. Not particularly exciting ones. Let's just get this one out of the way. Fnatic have officially released Golden. I didn't even realize he was sort of still there. He's just kind of been...
The thing though, Richard, this literally tied into the greatest callback anyone's done in ages. I just took his tweet and I just said, "I alive."
Yeah,
because it's almost like he's just done that for real though. He's just like, "Hey guys, just want to let you know I'm a free agent." It's like, mate, we didn't even know you were still in the game. Like, what are you talking about? Why? That's almost like the reverse of when they go, PTR has announced in 2021 he is retiring. Give me a break, please. You were done years ago. But in the same scenario, it's like, Golden, mate, what basis would anyone have to pick you up, though? No one, literally, genuinely do. No one remembers it was years ago when it was the land period of Fnatic. Genuinely, we're almost 2 years at that point now, boys. Like, what is this?
Yeah, it's weird because I just assumed he was like moving on to the next stage of his career anyway, because he was coaching the academy side, right? In Fnatic. Yeah, Fnatic Rising, I think. Because he was featured on that We Play Academy league. So, you know, I was like, okay, I think Golden could be a good coach, actually. He's got a good mentality, good brain for the game. Obviously, he's got the IGL chops. He's won lands. I imagine a lot of people look up to him still in the scene. And even if you weren't there to see the things he achieved, you know, that you can go look it up and see for yourself. But no, he seems adamant that he wants to return to playing, and I'm like,
it's always
yeah,
like that.
and like I'm like you, I'm just thinking, where if a guy like MSL is still out there in the wilderness, like I don't even know what MSL's fucking doing these days, right? If someone like MSL is still out there in the wilderness, where is Golden, who unfortunately for the last couple of years, not only essentially didn't do anything, didn't win anything. But there was some weird shit that went on. Like what happened with Cloud9 where he was in the team and then just suddenly disappeared. Remember when he came back to Fnatic and it was all going well and then he was just gone. He was just literally just gone, vanished. It was even intimated in like online noise, interviews with players and stuff that they didn't even know what he was doing. He hadn't even logged on to the internet. Now, maybe something personal happened. Maybe he just lost his mind in the fucking pandemic like so many people have. Who knows? Like, but at the end of the day, unfortunately, you're only as good as your last project, and your last project, as far as everyone can tell, was you took Fnatic to something like 60th in the world when you were last a part of it and then disappeared. So it's not a great advertisement for your services. I will say, I mean, I almost wish NA was still around, just so he could go and pick up some of these young NA players and maybe give them some European tutoring and mentoring. But without that market there, I can't see Golden on a top European team.
The problem he has, though, that kills me. This is what kills me is, remember, the only time period where him and Fnatic went to shit was in the online period, which unfortunately was it was like over 1.5 years now. It's almost 2 years, let's be real. So the real problem is this. Technically, the last time I saw him on LAN when he was with Fnatic, it was amazing. He was one of the best IGLs in the world. Like, he looked like he was doing a great job calling around a very interesting mix of players. You had the youth in Brolan, you had the super washed players we all fought in JW and Flusher, who were like having a career revival, especially JW actually looked half decent at one point in time. You had all this, like, a very interesting mix of players. So the problem is, part of me wants to see, maybe he's still got it if we're on LAN. Maybe, again, if we go to these LAN tournaments, he's someone who actually can captain a team and overcome this inexperience a lot of the current talent at Tier 1 has. The problem is, though, he did so little during the online period. I don't know how anyone can give you that benefit of the doubt, because I have to add this in as well. It's another factor I feel like should have been shaded into the major, but people missed. Because the major was literally 2 years after the previous major and 1.5 years after we went online. So it's not just that it's because people were online or people are onliners. People might genuinely have just gotten worse over those 2 years. We just never got to find out because we didn't sort of have the LAN circuit to see them naturally drop off as they might have done. So for all I know, maybe Golden's period would have just lasted 2 or 3 years and that would have ended now anyway. Maybe he only was going to be a flash in the pan. You can't know, unfortunately. So again, your name's Golden, mate. Unfortunately, you don't have the name like Carrigan. You don't even have MSL's name. So I agree. Unfortunately, I wouldn't hate the idea some team gives him a chance. I think there's plenty of teams with young players that you're saying could get a benefit out of it. It's just at the moment I feel like his rep it's the lowest his stock's ever been. Surely, like, it doesn't feel like there's even any hype.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, for me, I think the logical road should have been he should have asked Fnatic if he could have stuck around and kept that coaching gig going, right? I mean, seems like a good time to transition in. The We Play Academy League, by the way, is straight fucking fire. It's getting a lot of eyeballs considering its academy teams. Good production, good level of production. There's an opportunity, and I think actually legitimately, like, just say, for example, if I was Mouse Sports, I might want to take some of my academy players, like, and actually start bringing them into the team the way things are going at the moment. So, it's a good level and he could be part of something, getting on the ground floor. Instead, he's going to come back and he's going to end up like in fucking, one of those teams like Flush's team, Gorillas or whatever, which, by the way, spoiler, even he's left now. He's not.
It's all those headlines I'll never get over, like Flusher leaves Gorillas. It's your fucking team.
It's your team. I know.
Team. What is this? Why is everything such a clown show? And if people don't know, the one that kills me about the Flusher one, by the way, is this guy had offers. Like, there was people, because he's a legendary player, people wanted to play with this guy. He probably could have been, by the way, in like a FaZe Clan type team, probably.
No, he said on stream, I forget which way around it was, but he said he was approached by FaZe. But I can't remember if it was they wanted him to be the IGL, or he didn't want to be, and he didn't want to, or he wanted to be the IGL and they didn't want him as the IGL. I think it was the first one. But yeah, he said on a stream clip that he'd had an offer from FaZe. So it's like, yeah, I mean, look, I get it. It's sort of, this is going to be the common theme of this filler episode, I guess. I understand you wanting to have the equity and wanting to own the means of production, dare I say it. I get all of that, obviously. But the reality is you got to know what the fuck you're doing and you got to have a game plan. Too many of these players just go, right, I'm leaving this team and I'm going to now enjoy a period in free agency. Don't worry, I'm sure the orgs will come. No, unfortunately, not right now. No, maybe 3 years ago, yeah, people would have beaten down the door to get any CS team. Right now, every team owner will tell you, you're not making any money on CS. It's a prestige pickup. You get involved because it'll get your eyeballs, not money, and it's a great spectator sport and all of that stuff. There's a million reasons why. It's the same thing that holds Dota back. Basically, outside of TI, having a Dota team fucking sucks. It really sucks. So, it's yeah. I think
not any orgs as well. Remember, there's almost no one. So if people don't know, I'll just look it up now to have a quick check. Actually, as far as I can tell, I looked it up. There are only literally 3 LCS orgs that have a CSGO team, and one of them's Dig, by the way, who obviously sort of min-max on that team. They don't really put the money in. So as you can see, like, we're also not in the world anymore, which is why there used to be so much money inflated in the past. Where in NA, the joke used to be up until a couple of years ago, you could be on like the 6th best NA team and be making like pretty good salary actually, even if you're not in the big tournaments. So I don't think people like Flusher. He's a perfect example. Some of the other names, Guardian. They really don't get that what 2021 is. They think we're in like 2018 and they're just going to like instantly walk into the next gig. Whereas actually what they find is the opposite, is that there are no gigs or you have like 2 offers. And if you don't really take one of those 2, that's it. That's just the end of Counterstrike for you, or you're waiting a couple of years. Because again, with these sorts of names, like, it's like I said about Golden, mate, the ship has sailed. It was years ago now. I'm sorry, it really was. Like, 2019 isn't relevant to people in 2021. Like, you have to have done something at least, at the minimum, at the end of 2020, you better have been really good. If you weren't, you sort of just, we've deleted you from history, I'm afraid. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, it's, the sport's moving on, right? And, we've got all these young players coming through. We've had an entire new region emerge since the days that these guys were good. So, if I'm in the market, right, it's like you say, well, look, why would I pick up some washed up player who I can almost safely assume has peaked? Why wouldn't I just go and pick up a bunch of Russian players? Why wouldn't I go do that
as well?
Yeah, exactly. Less money, better results. It's just, if you play it like it's a market thing, then it makes total sense. While we're talking about players leaving orgs and people fucking up their careers, would it be a segment on By the Numbers if we didn't bring up our old friend Henny? We have to pour one out for him again.
I know, I love it.
He joined 0-0 Nation, not to be confused with their academy team 0-0 Prospects.
Still one of the most ridiculous, like, self-owned memes I've ever heard. It's the idea you'd call it that yourself is so mental in it. I know, I can't handle it. It's so stupid. It's 0-0 Prospects. Anyway, I didn't think that up.
Basically, it was announced Henny was going there. His brother was obviously there as well. They eventually ended up getting benched. They wanted to take the team in a new direction. Still not upwards.
Well, perhaps.
Yeah,
I know, what the fuck. What are you on about?
Might want to be the direction you go, but it's whatever. It is what it is. And they ended up on the bench together. The brothers, the twin brothers, they do everything together. They join teams together. They get benched together. And in this instance, they've gone into free agency together. So I mean, look, we may as well just opine some more about how Henny has absolutely fucked his own career in ways that. I think we've definitely said different names for this before. I know that to be true. But
let's be real. Brazil alone is coming strong as fuck in the shortlist of players who fucked their own career. Even think about it. We've got Henny, FNX, KNG. Like, mate, we don't even need to go outside of Brazil. We've got such an incredible breadth of talent that just fuck their own career and sabotage themselves 24/7.
Yeah, it's actually insane. And with Henny though, it's almost like. It's such a unique situation because, look, I like,
no one knows who he is, though. This is the weirdest thing. Think of the 3 people I listed. He's not the one who even does like interviews. He's not even like a very public person. So somehow he's been like involved in all these like scandals / weird circles, but no one really knows who the guy is. Like, unlike any of the others, I can't even say anything about his personality. I don't know anything about him.
No. So I've had a number of Brazilian esports fans tell me, like, you wouldn't get it because you're not Brazilian. He just values playing with his brother over winning things. That to him is more important. It's like, yes, we've got people that do that over here too.
What a concept! Holy shit!
Yeah, it's called making terrible life choices where I'm from. Because like at the end of the day, Henny's still a top tier talent. I do get it. I do understand wanting to work with people you care about, but you have to set limits on it. Like if somebody is ultimately holding you back, then you've got to say enough's enough. And Lucas, for whatever reason, like he's just not in the conversation of tier 1 Brazilian CS, let alone tier 1
Especially
CS.
When you look
globally.
how much talent there is now as well, Richard. Here's the thing about this. I even also get it, but what I don't like about this is exactly what you just said. It only makes sense if the conversation goes like this. Look, I want to play with my brother because he's my brother and what a unique chance. And he's good at the game. If that third one's not there, you're a fool. Like, think about the best analogy I would give, because it's a very famous one in American sports, actually. You know the stories in American sports where the guy who's actually like the high school football or basketball coach, one of his sons is like one of the star players on the team, right? It's a classic nepotism, right? But the problem is, if that kid actually is one of the best players, it makes perfect sense to use that guy on your team. You know him better than anyone else. You have a relationship with him no one else does. You basically, like, that could be OP as fuck. You could have a mad advantage on everyone. The point is, it's only a problem when your son's dog shit and you've made him the star player. Henny, in this scenario, the joke is, like, he can still have his brother around him at any other circumstance. He can support him. He can do it, but why do they have to be in the same team? That's the part I don't get. That's the part that, to me, is a mystery as well. Especially because they have split up in their careers and then they just come back together. So I don't know why this is like some sort of bizarre thing where they have to ruin each other's careers like this. And I've always said this as well. Why does no one else do the other side of the equation? So if you had a brother and he was mega at the game and you're not so good and not even motivated, wouldn't you just not be a cunt and go, you know what, bro, just go play with someone else, mate? Like, I appreciated that. I love that you always said you'd play with me, but you're better than me right now. You know, if things ever change, we'll review it. But right now, I want you to succeed. Wouldn't you want your brother to succeed?
You know what I'm worried about?
What? You know, they retire?
No, fuck that. There's no chance of them retiring.
No way they're retiring. I know they're going to ride this thing.
What I'm worried about is because Vinny is leaving Furia and the other
team together.
I think they're going to go back. I think they're going to go to Furia.
Surely not.
Well, right, okay. Let's look at the pieces, how they're all fucking, laid out on the board, right? Drop is an academy player that they've got signed to their academy anyway.
It seems obvious.
Yeah, exactly right. They don't have that sort of secondary AWPer anymore because Art's gone onto the primary AWP and it is messing with their play style a little bit. Vinny, out of nowhere, despite being one of the longest serving players on this roster, has been told he's going to be reviewing his options and likely isn't going to be there, linked with Team Liquid, even though that's not happening anymore and stuff like that. So there's 2 vacancies essentially. So instead of Furia would really like to sign Safe, that was the headline that was bandied around. Spoiler, just absolute garbage, predicated on nothing, just other than Safe's a good player and he would be a good fit in this team.
There was never any actual real thing behind that. Fair enough.
Yeah, what I think is going to happen is that Henny and Lucas are going to rejoin Furia. It just seems so obvious to me.
It's also how players work, as bizarre as they are. Like you see with all these lineups, they always go back to lineups they think worked in the past. So, by the way, I wouldn't even hate it as a move. I only hate it in this sense, Richard. It's only inevitable one of them's going to become shit or get kicked and things could happen again, isn't it? Like, again, these guys, I'm sorry, I just can't trust these guys if I'm an org. There's another thing I'm kind of sick of, especially with Henny. It's like Henny and KNG, particularly these 2 players. You need an intervention where someone actually explains to you that you're wasting millions of dollars of other people's fucking money with your stupid caprice. You're not the ones who ever pay the cost, by the way. You don't ever carry the can for this. You don't lose your millions of dollars. This is the thing I can't stand about esports, Richard. People act genuinely like like fucking Carlos from G2 just is like Elon Musk or something, some like fucking ridiculous caricature of like an industrialist and a guy. He's not. He's a fucking guy who, at this point in time, by the way, guys, is not even that much richer than the biggest players in the fucking game. But we act like the players an exploited guy, as I've said, makes way more than he makes for the team. And we act like these owners of the teams are morons who deserve to lose all their money. Why? Don't we all want to watch the game? Don't we want this sport to succeed? Like, these guys, they've lived on other people's dime for too long now. It's one of the reasons why I hated this whole topic. You know, it's the same with the Dig one. I hate these Last Dance reunions because I don't feel like they're done in good faith. I don't think you really believe this is the team. I think you just think, fuck it, let's just dick around for 1 year on someone else's dime. Let him get his checkbook out and pay for it. It'll be a laugh, won't it? Haha, wow, can you believe he's actually paying us all to... But no, that's not fun to me. I don't think that's cool. Like, in a mad way, it's a very specific way, but I think that's kind of toxic. It's like economically toxic, you know, it's irresponsible.
Oh no, and it's inarguably bad for the scene as well. You know what I mean? Like there's still this sentiment among owners that players are sort of holding all the cards these days, right? And so when you see things like this where you can just commit to joining and basically get all your own way, and then as soon as well, my brother's been dropped from the team, so you're dropping me as well, essentially. Oh, no, I'd really like to keep you. Well, I don't want to play without my brother, so I'm just down in tools as well. It's like, I agree with you. I think it's like, it impacts negatively on the whole team he's a part of, the whole org he's a part of as well. So, yeah, but I honestly think they're going to rejoin Fury.
I can't lie. I'll definitely tune into some of those games.
I mean, the reality is, Lucas is a massive downgrade to Vinny, but Henny is a massive upgrade from Drop. I don't think they're any worse off.
Oh, I think it'd be an interesting team to watch, put them in the mix with all these top European teams and see what they can do. Yeah.
But the thing I'm massively sad about is Safe not getting his chance.
Oh, it's whack if that's the case. Yeah,
you know,
especially because wasn't he also a guy who was like older? Wasn't he like 26 or 27 or so? I think he was older than usually.
He's not. I don't think he's that old.
Maybe I've gone too far there.
Yeah, I don't think he's that old. So, no, you know what? You've nailed it. You're bang on. 26. Yeah, I didn't realize he was that old.
If he doesn't get signed soon, how old he got? You know.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. So I mean, it makes it even more sad. You know, because I think he's the guy that's like really shown, probably out of anyone right now.
Oh, it's obvious. He should definitely get a better team.
Yeah, totally. So there's that. The Brazilians are at it again. What else have we got going on? I'm just going through. Like I said, it's the slowest news week of all time. I won't even ask you about that or that. Let's talk about the Rops to FaZe move that they're now saying. Yeah, that's the big story. I mean, look, it's been talked around for a while. For some reason, that even though I think Rops could probably join any team really, and maybe outside an RV and improve it. He only seemed to be linked with FaZe or G2. He wasn't talked about for anybody else. Now in a report from Nell, which was then subsequently published on HLTV, apparently the deal to replace Olaf Meister on the FaZe roster is almost completed. So lots to talk about here. I can't say it's a surprise. I think Rops leaving Mouse was inevitable at this point. And listen, I have not in CSGO. I can't think of many players that have been as loyal to a bum org and got so little out of it. Frankly, I'd really struggle to think
usually
of anyone.
People go the other way. Like, I mean, for example, we've had outrageous examples like Cloud9 win the major with Stewie 2K, and the Stewie 2K says, I'd like to leave immediately to go to a rival team. Like, we have people go the other way. So, yeah, it's very rare you have people actually stay at the smaller team and go, I'll just give you another year. In fact, in this case, effectively, if you look at the whole online period, he probably stayed over 1 year longer than he should. He should actually have peaked out last year.
Yeah, I mean, definitely based on the results as well, but also I mean, what I'm told from these reports, right, and it lines up with what I know as well, is that basically he's still under contract until
I think it was sometime in the spring.
Yeah, it's like his contract ends at the end of February or March.
There we go. That would make sense.
But what they want to do is they do want to get him into FaZe to start the year. So Mouse are going to take a reduced buyout rather than lose him for nothing in 3 months' time. So fair enough. That makes sense. What I'm astounded at, before we even talk about whether or not this team can work, what I'm astounded at is that FaZe are actually still looking to spend money on CSGO. It blows me away every time considering they've probably been one of the biggest spending orgs of all time in the space already, and they sort of get, I would imagine, very little out of having a CSGO team.
I don't
frankly.
really get it myself because, again, you look at them as an org. They're one of the orgs where, like, I'll give you the obvious sidebar angle on this, right? In League of Legends, one of the most annoying things, if you people like me and Monty who do talk shows, is when you talk about TSM and you explain the context that in esports they lose money and they pay more salary than they get back, blah, 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 right? Idiots always go, "You're wrong, they're a very successful company." And Monty always goes to pains to point out, "Yeah, but not for the esports side, you moron. It's for like guides to play in the game, it's streaming." Well, the whole premise is in the modern day, you can run a company like a business and make fucking massive amounts of money off streaming and influence and all that jazz, which people like FaZe are obviously primed for. They're the kings of COD and Fortnite and all that bullshit. But what I don't get is this. That part of the esports sector, if anything, is the one that keeps getting bigger and bigger and you can make all this money out of. I don't really get why they even have a CSGO team, Richard. When I think of some of the teams that pulled out of CSGO, I'm talking like legacy orgs like Cloud9 and well, they don't want Envy, they don't want teams, but FaZe does. And then as you say there, even though you hear weird stories, like I heard like a few years back, there was a thing where they could have had, like, I think someone like Alex, but, you know, they wouldn't pay the extra or a tiny amount of buyout. Like, there are some weird stories, but generally, if you look at their history, aside from when they don't, like, they're just not able to nail, like, the signing of the player, they seem like every few years they're willing to spend money. Look at if they've landed in the last few years. Coldzera, fucking Carrigan back again. Twists comes in. Like, mate, they're signing talent. So, yeah, I don't really get it myself because the guy I know from their org who's into CS, he isn't one of the guys on the side of the influencer side. So it's almost like it doesn't make sense. I don't know what the identity of FaZe the org is, because to me they are just the Fortnite fuck boys, and of course they're being all the scams. So I'm almost like low key impressed that they keep putting money in the CS team, because it's the only thing I care about.
Yeah, well, and you know, look, this is the other part of the discussion. Like, there can be zero tolerance now if this move goes ahead for failure, right? Zero tolerance.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I personally think there already shouldn't have been anyway, but I agree.
Yeah, no, I
get to actually win with at the moment. No, if you take all of my start and you put Rops on this roster, if it fails, I'm telling you right now, either A, Carrigan was actually overrated, or B, some of these stars with big aren't stars. That's the only way it can be. Like the talent now, like look at it. Like again, if Rain is going to be the worst player on your team, you better be a fucking good team.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, put it this way. Look, I've watched a little bit of FaZe lately, and obviously, you know, we were there at the major when they didn't get through to the stadium, which I think was mega disappointing. Remains so. You know, you'll be able to go back in time and find our reaction to when they signed Twists. You can go and look at the Deserto videos I did. I'm like, this should be the best, because that was at a time when Gambit hadn't really emerged. You know, Na'Vi hadn't got their shit together. For me, FaZe could have been challenging for the top spot. Absolutely. And I'll sort of never forgive Carrigan for like being so dismissive about the online era, when the online era lasted 18 months. And like you say, we might be going back to online at the start of the year, depending on how things go globally. So, you know, it's like, listen, at some point you have to say, all right, well, fuck it. It is what it is. Let's just try our best and let's win some trophies and show people, you know, that, you know, this lineup can work. And then when we get to LANs, then, you know, we'll go to the next level or whatever. But now with Rops joining, for me, suddenly Rain, yeah, I sort of do see a little bit why the fans have been a bit down on Rain lately. Last few times I've watched them, it's been feast or famine with him. Like every time he's
totally carries, or he's just averages for.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, you know, on a team where it's like Twists is good for his frags. Carrigan, unfortunately, is going to be Carrigan. You know, like he just is the IGL. He'll pop off and have that one good game every now and then. But in general, you wouldn't expect too much of him. But and it's Brokey that's actually legitimately looked like a star. Now that's already taken this team in a realm it shouldn't be in. The fact that Brokey, who I don't even think he was an AWPer, by the way.
I think someone said he wasn't. Yeah,
when he first came into the team, he's picked up the AWP, and in terms of production, he's one of the best AWPers in the world right now. Like that's a legit thing to say. You can't, you know, that's not a contentious statement. So yeah, actually, I can understand why some of the fans are a little bit down on Rain. Now the difference here is, I think what's going to be interesting is having somebody way more reliable than Olofmeister come in, play those lurking roles. You know, you can almost put him in like for like the way they've been using Olaf at the moment. I think that's going to give an extra dimension, and I'll back Rain to turn his form around because I just think he's a phenomenal player. But yeah, I do. He's definitely been one of the issues actually in this team. Olaf's the big one. Like
that's the thing I can't forgive Carragher and FaZe for me. It's like, look, you don't have to literally come out and say the guy's dog shit, but how are you going to gaslight me that you can replace Cold Zero with Olaf Meister?
Yeah.
Like, you're in that scenario, you're just telling me Cold Zero was dog shit. Then, like, what? Like, how's that a reasonable one? Because it's like I always said, if they'd just kept the story as Olaf is only here, and we appreciate that he's standing in on short notice because we need to have a fifth player. If they'd have kept it as that, we could have had a decent narrative. But because they themselves pretended this was a real team, and this is like, this is we're sending it to the major like this, we'll have to pretend like you think this team's good enough then. And it clearly wasn't. No, the difference is here, to me, this is one of the most no-brainer moves in the history of Counterstrike because one, Rops has already played with Carrigan and had his career best form with him. Two, I don't think there is any role overlap with the other good players. Like people like Twist don't have to play how Rops are playing. And then you look at this, Rops plays a style of play that is mega consistent at keeping consistently high production of frags, right? So if you have Rops as your main star, if Twists only has to be another star player, and now Brokey's just your third best player, mate, you've already got a great core team there. And then who have we got as the other players? One of the best IGLs ever in Carrigan and an amazing land caller. And then Rain, a guy who basically spent the last 5 years transitioning to more of a supportive role and seems like actually, unlike Olaf Meister, he always keeps his level to a decent level, puts the practice in, has a good mindset for the game. But like this team actually looks pretty good. I know fans are going to go, well, how could one roster move? Because we're literally swapping out the worst player and putting in a star. This is like if in Vitality I took Kyojin out and put like fucking Hunter in their team. Like, of course it'd get way better.
Let me just put that into some sort of numbers that everybody can appreciate. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'll go 10 to be fair to Olaf Meister. So for HLTV rating, right, at his last 10 events attended, he has never gone above 1.
Not surprised if you watched.
Yeah, so he's done like a 0.92, a 0.95. No, tell a lie. That was a qualifier. And at the challenger stage at the major, he did go above a 1. So he's had a qualifier in the challenger stage where he went above a 1.
Where they went 3-0, if people remember.
Yes, yeah. So, and everyone was saying Olaf was back. Rops's last 10 events, he's never failed to go above a 1. And in fact, at the challenger stage, he was a 1.23 at the major. At IEM Winter, he was 1.06. And he's doing that in a dysfunctional mouse sports team that, can't buy a win at the moment. So at the end of the day, it's like you say, it's like, yes, it is just one roster move, but you are taking away the drag factor of the last year from FaZe and adding something that's going to really give it some oomph. And also, Robs is a professional. I hope when he watches this, he doesn't take it the wrong way. He was checked all the way out at Mouse. Like you can see, you watched the same games I did, and we even remarked upon it an episode or two ago. It was literally Robs was just faffing around doing nothing until the end of a round on the T side, and then he would go, all right, I'll try and 1v5 it, lads. And sometimes he even did it. He just was checked all the way out. He's gonna love being part of FaZe for sure. And so the final question on this topic sort of has to be, we're looking at rosters that are going to challenge Na'Vi in 2022. You and I have said the one that sort of emerges from the pack is, if Gambit can win this tournament, they're back in the conversation.
Interesting, sure.
Yeah. Obviously, the new Vitality lineup.
Goes out saying, yeah.
Right. But then it's these guys, right?
Yeah. I think they're in. I mean, VP as well. I'll put in the mix if we're talking about all the squads in the world. Yeah. Okay. No, the cool thing is this. This is why I unfortunately bemoan the fact that we might not have that many lands to start next year. If you have a mixture where it's like this, right? You got Na'Vi, but then you've got existing lineups. So Rourke and Gambit are still in the mix. Vitality gets a super team. You're adding in FaZe Clan with Rops, and you've got VP looking like they're coming out of the fucking darkness. It's in like 2 months from now, we could have a really strong top 10. Now, if Na'Vi can keep winning, that's when they'll just be given the era, it'll just be granted to them immediately.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I agree. We've had a really weak top 10 for what feels like a long time, where the top 3 teams, at any given moment are just so far and above everybody else. Yeah, it could be really good, especially if Na'Vi have a bit of a wobble, because let's be real, I know they could still win the Blast World Finals, but in losing to Liquid, they've already shown they are mortal. You know, they dropped a map
Way
again.
more playable already in all these matches, mate. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I mean, look, I know we'll talk about Blast in the final episode of the year, but I mean, they could have lost to G2 as well.
Sure.
That was on the precipice. They gave up maps, so I'm legit thinking, it could get very interesting at the start of the year. But yeah, for me, FaZe have to be in the conversation.
Absolutely.
They have to be. I mean, just by the own standards they set themselves. Right, one last thing to talk about, which I wanted to get your brain, get your brain percolating about, is obviously the Astralis stuff. Which basically what's happened there, for those who don't know, they've now had 2 tournaments where they've crashed out early after showing initial promise with #CrowdGate backing them. They've gone out 5th to 6th here at Blast. And I just want to say, I can't remember the exact your exact take on it, but I know specifically what I said, and that was that I wasn't sold on this team. I felt it had too many problems to actually be successful. And I saw you relishing in their current situation and having a few tweets today. So I thought it would be a good topic of conversation, one that's worth just having a sidebar about by itself rather than waiting for the tournament to end. And that is that, I mean, look, at this event, Glaive was on the AWP again. So so from at IEM Winner, where they went out 9 to 12, they didn't use an AWP at all. They were running 5 rifles. We said, like, enough's enough there. You can't ignore the AWP in Counterstrike. Like, what the fuck, what you doing with that? They've come to this one, and it's Glaive and not Lucky that picked it up again. And as you also predicted, at the CrowdGate event, Blast, which was the fall finals, Glaive actually had some legit performances on the AWP, not here. And so when you look at the stats overall of the players, you've got BlameF and Config have been fragging out, although, to be fair, Config had a couple of ropey maps himself, and then it's just a huge drop-off where you're basically talking about who's going to be one of the worst performers at the competition overall. Will it be Zitnix? Will it be Lucky? Will it be Glaive? And the disparity between the guys they brought in and the guys that they already had on the roster is really, really stark. So I'm telling you, I said I didn't think Astralis would be consistently in the top 10 with this lineup, and I'm feeling pretty good about that prediction. It's bold, sure, but I think as long as they commit to this stupidity and having Lucky long term, and spoiler, I've been told behind the scenes he's on a long-term contract.
No surprise there. They want to flip him, of course.
Yeah, so and obviously as well, just to add to the hilarity of it, because I saw Bubsky. What was it he said? I think I'm going to ask Santa Claus.
He said he's going to ask his mom for forgiveness for Christmas or something.
Oh, yeah, because he fucked up his career so bad or something. And you replied with, should ask for dignity.
That is my skill. That's my superpower. I say the thing that's true, but you're just not meant to say because it's considered rude or impolite.
Yeah. So look, I mean, I'm a stand by it. If Glaive's going to persist on the AWP, I don't know why Bubsky isn't in the lineup, especially given that the owner, Nicola Nyholm, has said Bubsky should be playing in the past, which makes me think there's some weird fucked up dynamic where
he's done something, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it makes but I mean, not only that, I think probably what's happened there is Casper shit has come in and probably made a bunch of demands how about he gets to pick the team.
Right.
And, he's the sportsman, right? He's the handball legend, apparently. And so he gets to pick this version of Astralis cannot work. It simply can't. And you know what happens next, Duncan? They'll end up putting Config on the AWP. I'm calling it now.
You don't have any options at this point. And the joke is, even though, by the way, it's a disgrace you'd taken a world-class rifle like him and put him in the AWP, he's actually, if you look at the players they've got, one of the most functional players on the AWP. It's actually probably logical they'll have to do it on some mats. I'm with you on that one. No, the problem with this team is this, right? I wish in some ways, like the timing of which events they'd done this had gone differently. Because what's mad is I did one of my live desks I do for my other sponsor, where it's like a pre-game desk, right? And it was for an Astralis game at Blast Fall Finals. And in it, right, me and whoever else, we just basically bash the fuck out of Astralis and just say it's not going to work. Like, you know, there's a million fight. Even the players that are good, blame F and Config. Is Config going to recover from an injury? Will blame F be not? Like, there's a factor for every player. Well, the joke is, obviously, they looked amazing at that tournament, and everyone else was like, this ends poorly, because Zoomers can't handle the idea like history, you know, perspective might change as time progresses on. They don't understand that concept.
Yeah, linear time.
They think every single static judgment made right now holds throughout all of eternity. They're actually morons, essentially. But basically, when we did that, right, obviously at the time it was like, oh, egg on your face. And I even thought to myself, and sadly I didn't do it, this is actually when I should just put the video out, where I just double down on all the shit I just said. Because when you look at this team, on paper, it doesn't even make that much sense. As in, like I just said, Config just literally had what could have been a career-ending injury. Now, here's what's crazy. The first tournament back Blast, he looked like he had nothing had injured him at all, looked incredible. I've got to say, these last two tournaments, he's looked pretty whack half the games. Like, some of these games he's not in, and by the way, he does play one of the harder roles in the game, so if he's not going to be fragging out, this is what people don't get. It's not that they can't ever be good. It's that they weren't even the best at Blast 4 finals. He just unnaturally made them look like they had a shot to be in the mix for it. If you take away him being basically an MVP of the tournament, they're like a fucking average ass team, even at these fields. Like, they're one of the worst teams in these tournaments. Then let's go down the line. Lockie, actually, Maui found this stat, I just confirmed it myself. At the last 3 lands, this is including Blast 4 finals, Lockie doesn't have an AWP kill. 3 lands, 0 AWP kills. He's their AWPer. It's why the joke is Glaive being too honest has fucked them, because he made that comment months ago before they had Lucky that they're not going to be number 1 unless they have a world-class AWPer, essentially. Well, the joke is, Glaive, you're fucking right. Can I introduce you to Glaive 2022? Like, give me a break, mate. So already they're in massive trouble with what Lucky's doing there. Why isn't Bobski playing? Config actually, it's only 1 tournament thus far. He's come back and looked really good. Blame F carries in terms of numbers, but if you go and look at his frags, I'd say they're not the highest impact frags. He just sort of cleans up. And then Glaive and Zipnix, this is where, now we've really touched a nerve, Richard. Because you're allowed to trash everyone else, but don't ever talk about CSGO royalty. Well, I am going to talk about CSGO royalty. Glaive AWPing like that was a fucking pipe dream. I think it's my storyline that he just did it to be a G in one series where it worked. He himself knows it doesn't work and has dropped the AWP. And quite frankly, the times he did try AWPing since then weren't good. They didn't look nice. If everyone wants to meme MSL for that time he AWPed, and by the way, was the MVP of the tournament, at least he did it for a whole tournament. Glaive did it for like 2 series or something, mate. Like, it's not like he even kept it going. And then you look at the last player is Zipnix. Mate, if there's anyone, like, Zipnix has gone to Olaf Meister category now. You are so checked out on the game and cynical accepting these checks. It's actually getting to be a bit of a disgrace. You're ruining your own legacy at this point. Because I don't have a problem with playing bad in your legacy, but I hate the idea of people phoning it in. Like, Zipnix, his whole game was based on his brain, guys. That's about reps. That's about hours in the film room clicking. He's supposed to be some like those quarterbacks who just watch every play of the opponent. If he does his homework, he's gonna have impact on the game. If you look at the eye test for Zipnix, dude, he's not even in the clutches half the time. He's not doing any of the shit that you think of a classic Zipnix. And just go and look at his fucking stats page for the last year, mate. It is criminal. This motherfucker is never at that 1.0 or above rating. Never. And before people go, but Thorin, he's a support player. The whole reason he was OP in the Astralis era is because he would be a support player that got like a 1.1 rating. So the idea was the worst player on your team still frags. Like, this guy, like the whole team, the joke of this team is Lockie might not even be their biggest problem, and that he is a massive problem.
Well, I'm gonna pull your card on that one. I'll tell you why. Because one of the things I wanted to say on this episode coming in, this is why I'm just having a random conversation about Astralis, honestly, is because there was this sort of fucked up. You know, everyone was like, "Oh, he's a rifler. He's a rifler the whole time. He was a rifler the whole time," because he actually got like a positive rating at the Blast Premier Fall Finals, right?
So not true. You can go and look. He was getting more skills with the AWPing when he was in Tricked. You can go and look at the stats.
Yeah, but they're like, "Oh, he's a rifler. He's a rifler. Glaive's figured it out. We're gonna unlock Lucky." Right. So at this event, across 7 maps, do you know what his HLTV rating was at the Blast World Finals?
It's going to be fucking terrible. I'm going to guess like 0.9 or something terrible.
Keep going.
Worse than that, 0.8.
Keep going.
0.7.
0.77 rating. A career low. Well, actually, no, not a career low. But for him to have played worse than that, you have to go back to when he literally first came in the game when he was like 15. So at the end of the day...
Whatever.
That's a good one, no bad. No, it just makes you look like a bit of a boomer. But who gives a fuck? Yeah. No, but like for real, like he's having a nightmare on the rifle, and you know when you consider as well the teams they've lost to at Blast, like come on, surely you're not getting manhandled by this Team Liquid. You know, Nip, we didn't even have device.
By the way, that's how special the Astralis org is. They've now constructed a 5-man lineup that just loses to Team Liquid every time. I don't know how you did it. You did the impossible. We all thought it couldn't be done, but you knew better, Nicola and I. Oh, give me a break. Now you even lose to fucking Team Liquid and they're dead. They're not even alive.
Yeah, absolutely insane. Like, put it this way. At nowhere was it clearer to me how far off Astralis are when they got 10 rounds in 2 maps against Vitality. So I think they've got real problems moving forward. Yes. And unfortunately, they're going to have to... You can't have Zitnik's unlucky, right? And so... we all know who's got to go. Now, it makes me sad because when Lucky first came in the team, I think his first event for Astralis was the Pro League, where they got absolutely rinsed. It might have been the one heroic one. But anyway, so I said, you got to give this guy a few months. Not only is he young, he's an AWPer. It's a mad world. All his mistakes are going to get super highlighted. And that was when the community were actually pretty down on him, saying, who's this kid? You know, there was a number of Reddit threads, oh, he's whiffing a bunch. You go back, I'm there, and I'm saying give him time. I think he's had that time now, unfortunately, and he's not even good enough to be used in his primary role, and he's definitely got no plan B to his game right now. He needs to be in that Astralis Academy team.
Yeah, what you should do is, this is a player where I've got the lens for it. All you do is you flip it the other way. Instead of us making all these cases of why he shouldn't be picked, all I'll do is challenge anyone. Lockie himself, Astralis fans. Give me 3 reasons he should be in Astralis. There you go. I don't think you can get me even 1. Just give me 3. Because, by the way, none of them make sense, Richard. Like, remember, one of the best reasons you can ever give is, this guy was amazing at tier 2 and all this hype. He didn't. He didn't even have that. That's fake. There was nobody talking about this fucking guy. So what I don't get is, it's like, this is the weirdest one of all. Because the whole Bobski to Astralis thing at least makes sense. That was a rising talent who did look like one day he should be on a tier 1 team. Yes, a tier 1 team worse than Astralis. So I even think that one was actually a smart bet that maybe we can flip him for like 700k. Maybe we'll get some team who just think he's their future. What I don't get is, I don't even see how you're going to flip Lockie. Like, to me, all you're going to do is just waste the good players' time. And then in 6 months, just have to cut him or send him to the academy and stuff. Like, I don't know what even the point of doing this is. I mean, the joke is, yes, maybe it's a Casper Vid thing of like, oh, we can create the stars or something. Maybe they really believe that, but I don't think it's a thing in Counterstrike personally. I think you have to be good at the game. You can't craft someone into that player.
I mean, I think players can develop. I think players can learn from other players. But yeah, I mean, look, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think like the idea that, you know, you're gonna end, you can't take something that's completely raw and turn it into like, you know, the next simple or whatever. I get that, but I mean, if you want an argument about where you can come from to where you can be, Bit. I mean, you know, for me, he shows it can be done. He's another guy, by the way. No one was talking about Bit when he joined Navi. I don't give a fuck. You can pretend to be a hipster if you want. No one was talking about that guy. And when he was getting in and out of the team, the community was saying he's never going to, you know, they were calling him bot. He's never going to be as good as Flamey. By the way, the absolute worst thing you could say about any professional
that one,
player.
by the way, guys.
Yeah, right.
What? He'll never be better than bloody Flamey. You haven't even been someone good, for fuck's sake. What are you doing?
And then, obviously, they finally get rid of Flamey. Bit gets a run in the team, and suddenly everyone's going, oh, holy shit, he's doing better than Perfecto. Holy shit, he's doing better than Electronic. And now, by the way, Scream isn't even the headshot machine anymore in CS. Like, Bit has beaten Scream's record of headshot percentages at a tournament. So, you know, you can definitely do it. And I've got to believe, by the way, one thing I'll give Na'Vi management credit for and Blade credit for, you've got to believe that there was something in the way they brought him into the team and used him sparingly that sort of maybe did contribute to either his desire or his mentality to get this game together. You know, I'm going to give them full credit there, even though it could have just been a fluke. It also can't be a fluke, by the way, if you consider that, you know, Blade obviously had the association with the Gambit players that are doing so well now. Yes. Munazzi's come from absolutely nowhere and just been signed to G2, apparently, behind the scenes. They are tapping all these like fucking, you know, resources and potential players out there, and it shows. So I think you can. I just don't think Astralis can. Because it's in the hands of a guy that was a professional fucking handball player and not some fucking tenured 1.6 IGL. It's a totally different world. He thinks it's sports. It isn't. It's esports. It is different. You can't just have like an academy and a training center and produce incredible players that you then either asset flip or bet into the team. In that sense, you're right. It doesn't work like that. And I think that's the problem. I think Astralis really think it does.
I also just think there's this weird angle that they do in general. This is a very quick sidebar. Whenever they bring the topic up, which obviously orgs love to do, because the problem with esports orgs, if fans don't get it, is currently esports orgs still essentially just operate as a middleman agent, almost on a marketing level, for big sponsors that want to just sponsor a team, and then essentially they use the players as just the vehicle to make their team big. So at the moment, right, orgs actually struggle to sort of justify what they're there for. So one of the things people like Astralis try to do is they overtly try to make connections to real sports. We've even seen it obviously like with North, where you directly get bought by a football club, because the implication is we're going to bring the tech that comes around the sports industry, and we're going to develop players and academies, and we're going to, bring through people. We're going to work on their psychological framework. So it's not just, you're either good on land, sink or swim, you're done. If you're good, you can play. If otherwise, you're kicked out. No, we're going to bring people through. But the one flaw I see in this is they almost do it like from the wrong angle. Like I get the vibe that they really do think it's like you interview the player and say, oh, he's got the right attitude and a good, mindset to practice. And, in practice, he's doing the extra. It's like, listen, one of the problems in a game like Counterstrike is, like, ultimately, if you can't shoot people in the head, you're going to have a very hard time finding a place on a team. You either have to, in that scenario, have a different role or fill something. Like, you're not going to bring through young players. And I'm sorry, if you are a young player, it really is sink or swim. Like, you can do like what you're saying. Like, it does seem like they had like a very like clever sort of gradual way to put Bit in the line. So he wasn't put like Lockie was straight into the spotlight and then failed for 2 or 3 tournaments and get kicked out. They gradually brought him in and checked that he was sort of ready, and they sort of could see A/B testing of what you're losing with Flamey, which wasn't much in this case. It was worth the gamble. My problem is, I get the vibe like Astralis, it's almost like they think this is like fucking, you just pick someone out of the crowd, like, right, that guy, we could turn anyone into a star. No, they have to be really good already. They have to have the potential already. Like, look, I've obviously done, like, I think probably a pretty good job of trying to talk down the Monacy move, because people are already trying to make it like we can just skip forwards 5 years and he's simple too. No, nobody's simple too. But here's the thing. I at least know why G2 would gamble on Monacy, because the hype is that he could be a simple type player. Some of these players, like I said, they don't even have the hype. Like, you're really just trying to fucking ice skate uphill, mate. You're not going to turn this guy into device. And there's the other factor as well. Give me a fucking break with the PR. If you lose essentially the most decorated AWPer in the history of CSGO, and you put in a young AWPer, you yourself have to constantly address that he isn't device. Otherwise, you're putting that on him. It's implied in the circumstances. It's like, as I said, if you go and you take Messi's spot in Barcelona, it doesn't matter that everyone knows you aren't Messi. It implies you have to be judged against him because he's who you just had. So I think the orgs, full spectrum, they've done a terrible job handling even the PR, in my opinion. I think there's so many other angles you could have gone with. Like, I noticed Zonic at least had a smarter approach. It was his approach, essentially, was just rejigging what you just said, just kept saying over and over again, sort of give the guy a chance, like he's still young, like even device wasn't, it's like you just do all that. Like, I hate the whole way they've handled this approach.
I think there's an aspect of hubris to it too.
He's going to get all the blame when it fails.
Oh yeah, of course, and yeah, he's been set up to fail essentially. I mean, I'm massively sympathetic, but I think there's an element of hubris to it, and that is that if they do drop him, then it is a tacit admission that they don't know what they're doing.
They don't have a system.
They don't have a system. I mean, I'll say this about NIP, if you want a sort of apples to apples comparison. I don't buy into all of that bullshit, the NIP system and all of this nonsense.
Oh, no, of course not.
Because the system just seems to be, we'll roll the dice on an academy player if anyone needs some time off, right? But at this event, and again, we'll talk about it more next week, they've brought in that Forzy guy, and mate, actually, I could see him taking Plopsky's spot. Personally,
I think something to his game, sure.
Yeah, I think he's had some fucking sick performances, and when Device gets back, I wouldn't want to necessarily slot him into the academy side. And, keep in mind that, they did it with like ZTR as well, where I thought he looked good enough to be on the roster permanently. And then they sent him back. Like, they actually do have an academy side that functions as an academy side with players that are capable of coming into the team to do a job. Astralis don't have that.
That's the most criminal part. If people don't know, their academy squad was the worst in the first season that we played. Logically, if he was what they say he is, Richard, why didn't they just put him on the academy squad first, have him carry the We Play tournament like Monacy did, and then it would even be the perfect sort of narrative to bring him and try him out in the main lineup. Like, I don't buy that they ever thought this guy was that good. And by the way, as I've implied there, their fucking talent scouting is trash. They have nobody in their fucking talent squad. I mean, the joke is they had one guy and he actually ended up being on Copenhagen Flames, but they never picked him. I think it was the fucking Xiphon guy or whatever.
I mean, so like at the end of the day, I don't know what Astralis can do to fix this moving forwards. But the longer it goes on, the worse it's going to be. There's no world where in 2022 suddenly this team functions correctly.
Oh no!
And it starts, by the way, by you've got to put Lucky back on the up. I hate to break it to you, but he can't rifle. So
also, think about this. After the first tournament, assuming you ignore the whole crowd cheating element, the story should have been, how long can the honeymoon period last? Because we all know the honeymoon period, listen, it's obviously a psychological phenomenon, but it appears to actually influence the way people think, and it does seem to be the case. You often get those few tournaments where it's working and no one knows why yet. Well, the joke is, they've already gone from it's a honeymoon period to the next event, last place. So now it's already like, shit, how many months do they need? How much more time do they need? So they're already on the opposite side of the fucking narrative spectrum. Like, this team was the one that was supposed to have hit the ground running. And we're in the era, this is the worst part of all. We're in the era when we're just about to massively upgrade the rosters of the top 10. This team, no joke, they might not even be a top 10 team 2022. That would be my pick if they keep this 5-man line.
Yeah, no, that's legit, right? Because like, well, let's just put. We're gonna talk about device, and then we'll get the viewer questions. But let's be real. The Vitality have put that super team together. You've got to believe G2 are going to be in the mix to win tournaments.
Yes.
Gambit have earned some self-respect at the end of the year with a performance on LAN. You know, the win over Vitality today is legit. Na'Vi, obviously, are the team to beat. Heroic are there. Virtus Pro are going to be perennial spoilers. We've just talked about Alphas in the mix. Liquid are doing a rebuild. EG are doing a rebuild. How many more fucking teams do you need? You know, like, yeah, Astralis have real problems. By the way, an NIP with Device, you've got to believe they're going to get somewhere. They've already spent on a star player. That's 10 names. That's before we even get into the ones that are currently below Astralis. Like, what are Entropic going to do? We know that Elian's legit. What's this UK Fnatic going to do?
Absolutely.
Right? Copenhagen Flames might not be a flash in the pan. Astralis have fucking problems, mate. They've got real problems. And like I called it on day one. I said, I don't think this will be a consistently top 10 team. They're 9th at the moment, and that's where they're enjoying the residual benefits from previous events. It's not going to stay that way. So they need to figure out this system. Now, the good news is you've got Glaive. So he's going to get as much as he can. But yeah, I think he's got to put Lucky back on the AWP. Him being an AWPer is a pipe dream. And there was rumors going around. And this is where we'll end and go to viewer questions. A lot of speculation around Device returning to Astralis. So let me just go through. By the way, shout out to Makalele who's in the chat. Show him some love. He's saying he misses CSGO. Miss you too, Chief.
Miss you, legend.
Yeah, miss you, legend. Miss you, legend.
There you go.
You know, right. So let's go through the speculation. So the first thing that happened was, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Pimp. Talked about on stream how Device had got an apartment back in Denmark and was going to move back to Denmark and wasn't going to live in Sweden for the duration of playing for NIP. That was the first thing. Then, there was a couple of rumor reporters, like I think that Overdrive said Devices asked or something like that, you know.
All right. Okay.
And then obviously now coming into this competition, he's missed 2 tournaments essentially, the end of one and all of this one, due to an unspecified illness, which by the way, no one has a right to know what's up with him. And we know he's had illnesses in the past and stuff. So, you know, and if it was, God forbid, like COVID or anything like that, I wouldn't say anything.
They actually specifically say it wasn't COVID, though. I think it was one of those ones where they maybe said in the public statement, like, he's ill, but it's not COVID or something. I think I might be wrong.
Which, by the way, it's just so mega stupid you have to specify.
I know.
Like, put it this way, if I was running an org now and any of my players needed time out, I would never be specifying for what reasons. because everyone's brain just immediately goes, "It's COVID. Was he vaccinated?" It's like, guys, I long for the time when none of your fucking business was back on the menu. Like, can we have that back on the menu, please? None of your business. But anyway, what is my business is speculating about roster moves in Counterstrike. And so, do you put any credence in this? I think it would be a massive. I don't think anyone would come out the winner if Device actually ended back up at Astralis, because I guarantee he won't enjoy playing in this lineup, even if he does replace Lucky.
The main problem with that storyline is, one, it just shows how childish fans are. That's the logic. Oh, maybe Device just go back then, undo the deal with Nip, just give the money back. And you're like, nah, you fucking children, aren't you? You're not adults. You never worked in the real world. But what I would say is this: what reasons did he have to leave Astralis? Now I know people are going to go, just get his girlfriend live in Sweden. No, that's how a child like you thinks. You think there's only one factor that determines everything. That was one of many factors. Like, you think in that scenario, like, oh, I really want to be in Astralis, play all these, but oh, she lives in Sweden. Well, there'd be ways around that, wouldn't there? So what I would say is this: one, I don't suspect it's going to happen, because I got the vibe he also didn't like the Astralis org and the way some of that was dealt with. Let's put it this way: a fan of man said this. I thought it was a pretty good point. Notice how the only two players they were able to retain from the classic lineup were the two players they gave time off.
Yeah.
Interesting how that works, isn't it? The only two. The rest basically told him, under no circumstances, well, I'll be playing with you and I'd like to go elsewhere, actually. And basically just fucked off and have gone to bigger teams elsewhere. So my issue is this. I agree with what you said at the end. I think all the pipe dream of what if Astralis went back to a Device only works if it's the Astralis from Blast Fall finals. Yeah. That team is like, wow, imagine if you throw a Device in the mix. Dude, they could have won the event. This team, if you put Device in the team, it's worse for everyone. It'll be a worse team than Nip. By the way, Device probably won't play in his best, because I don't know what the fuck he'd be like. Totally different mix of players, different coaching staff. I just don't see how it makes sense for anyone.
No Dupree, by the way. Which
doesn't make any sense to me. Listen, obviously Astralis players have done a lot of weird moves I don't understand myself, or I would disagree with. So I won't put it completely out of the bounds of possibility, but I just don't see why it would be done. I don't. Even for Astralis, you're not thinking it through. They don't want to spend money, guys. How much would it cost to get Device back now? Even if you get him back, by the way, he's going to have a lot more fucking salary than Lucky does. I guarantee you that much right now. So in this scenario, like, I don't think Astralis is even thinking. I don't think anyone's thinking of that move. I think, and I'll go back to what I said when Device joined Nip. Bro, aside from the ROPS conversation, you're the most eligible player to join any top 10 team that speaks English. So why would you go back to Astralis? And I'll throw this out there. When you leave a team in the way that these players did from Astralis, the rest of your career is about proving it wasn't about Astralis, for fuck's sake. Look at the way they did you. They did you semi-dirty, mate. So that scenario, you don't go back to... I always found it whack as a weird side angle. I know it's because it's his hometown. I always found it super whack when LeBron James went back to the Cavaliers after their owner literally did an open letter where he essentially like mocked and derided him.
Yeah.
Like in that scenario, the way you beat that guy is you just go and win all the championships, but never for his team. You win like 5 championships for some other team, and then you go, that could have been you, dickhead. Now maybe wind your fucking neck. You don't go back, join, and then win him a championship and go, well, all's well that ends. No, that's whack. That's not a good storyline. Where's the revenge on that? So I don't see why anyone would do this move, but I think that's just a fan HLTV move. I'll be very disappointed if Device goes back.
Yeah, I think it's bullshit personally. And also remember, the big motivating factor for Device, more than all the other shit that the kids are talking about, was he wanted to prove he could be the number 1 player.
Yeah, of course.
He wasn't a system warper. He can carry games. It hasn't worked out so far. Couple more pieces at NIP, who knows? But like I say, NIP are having the better of Astralis on the regular. So
NIP's closer to being the best team than fucking Astralis is. Come on.
For real. So we'll move on to viewer questions. If you support the Patreon page, $50, you can ask us a question. We'll do our best to answer it. Some questions are getting weird now because we've been doing this for so long. And if a question is too weird, we'll just ignore it and tell you to ask another one. So Detlef Insomniac says, first of all, thank you and the rest of the talent for making this. Oh, wait, no, how far back have I gone? That's he's talking about the major there. Did you copy the right one?
Yeah, that is the right one. You just,
okay.
I guess he hasn't asked one since.
All right, no worries. He said, thanks to you and the rest of the talent for making this major a great one, regardless of all the issues. Now, gentlemen, I have a stolen time machine from an area numbered 50+1. It's 2016, and you decide to have a whip round for £2 to purchase the legendary Kaz esports from Big Z and Bagsy. After securing $1 billion of investment from Madams, you signed Carrigan to lead your team. Which 4 players who significantly underachieved in the time period between 2016 and the current day would you sign, believing Carrigan could help them realise their full potential?
Yeah, so if you see the mechanism he's doing here, if you're a fan, is since famously Carrigan's a guy who's supposed to get the most out of all the players in his team. Well, the idea is we're going to take players that didn't quite hit their potential, and Carrigan's going to be the one who's he's the whisperer. It's a good one. What was the years? 2016 to now?
Yeah. So from 2016 onwards. So I'm trying to think who has underachieved.
I mean, I'll give you a classic one because he was still around back then. Scream.
Yeah.
There's a player who could have done so much more, couldn't he? Could have been like, people don't get it. Mechanically, he was absolutely like contender for best player in the world. It's just the problem is the rest of his game never could. He could never kind of find his comfy spot. He had teams where he was good, but I always felt like, again, I mean, essentially he was existence or any of the French IGL's problem child when they could never quite figure him out.
For me, the problem with Scream was and I said this at the time, and I got mocked and insulted for saying it at the time, but I think history's bore me out on this one at least. It was just this steadfast refusal to sort of have an all-round game. Like if you look at Bit, you wouldn't say he just goes for tap headshots. No. It's just he has unbelievable raw aim, but he also, Scream wouldn't spray. He would never spray. He would, you never saw Scream get spray downs. Now you would see him if he was rushed get 5 fucking headshots out of nowhere, and you'd be like, "Holy shit, how's he done that?" But the game isn't built like that mechanically. That is like a rarity. You've got to be god tier to do that, which he was. He was god tier at one thing, clicking on heads, which you might think to yourself, well, that's brilliant, but no, not all guns get you instant kills with a headshot. Not all guns reset their aim, even if you do tap quick enough. And the way players space out and they're shooting at you, you've got to be able to get multiple kills. That was his problem. He just wasn't a multi-fragger. So, and I think Bit shows you what Scream could have been in a way. Because, he's got that raw aim, that headshot, but he's got an all-round game and an all-round game sense and all-round understanding. I also do think that, best will in the world. I always thought Scream was a bit of a peanut brain player.
He just wasn't a cerebral.
He didn't seem like a great thinker, which is why. But he didn't need to be.
No.
Remember that G2 lineup where it was Shocks and Scream, right?
Yes.
That is one of the great underrated.
Oh, they were mega. Yeah, those two players were fucking unreal that year.
Yeah, that should have done so much more.
That's also the area where people do like they think we're dissing him when we imply he's not the smartest player. Yeah, but he's like a centre forward. Like you can just score with fucking tap ins. Like you don't have to be like some super. Like, we're not talking like a central midfielder controlling the game. So no, in this scenario, essentially, if I set you up, which is what I'm hoping Carrigan does in this team, and I call the right site, and you go in there, and you're the second in if you're Scream, you just shoot everyone in the head. That is your job, and we'll win the game if you go. Then you pick one. Who would you put forward? So we'll go. We'll pick a few.
We'll go one at a time. I mean, Scream's a good shout, and I just want to say as well, despite his raw aim, he refused to play entry fragger, which pissed me off immensely because he could have been one of the greatest entry players of all time. He just didn't want to do it, which is another.
Also, that's another thing. Another problem Scream had is one of those players where I always say, like, I wish I could control their fucking skills.
Exactly.
I agree. If you just put him in those roles, you'd think he should be the best at it, but obviously, bizarrely, he just wasn't comfortable. Was he doing that? He wanted to do all this shit.
I'll do one that you like, Oscar.
That's a good one.
As I know you like him. For me, I always just thought, he's a bit of a basket case sort of outside the game. It's not what he does on the server. And because of that, he never got a chance to like tie down a real long run on a team that gets him the success commensurate to his skills. But, on his day, he wasn't like Guardian or Kenny S levels, but, he was up there. He was
really good.
Yeah, he was really, really good. And never really got the run that he deserved. Could Carrigan shave off some of those idiosyncrasies? Probably. He's done it before. He's helped players improve their mental as well as improve their skills. So, yeah, he would be on my team. So we've got Scream, we've got Oscar.
One thing Carrigan seems to be really good at, it's just I think people don't know, because unfortunately the most high-profile teams he's in is FaZe, and they're all ready-made, like fully completed personalities usually, and or star players of former teams. He actually seems amazing at setting the actual mood of teams, though. It's why the moment that the players question Carrigan, he's done. Like his time there's done. The team's going to die, because when a Carrigan team is going well, he always seems to have amazing rapport with all the players. It's one of the reasons I also knew he was fucked with Nico, because I could always just tell, like, especially once they'd lost a couple of times, Nico was like a little bit soured on him, and it's like once the relationship's ruined like that, like it's not going anywhere. So yeah, the idea is, whereas some of his other teams, Oscar was essentially treated like you're just another player. I'm sure Carrigan would work to make him feel part of the team and find out how to accommodate him, all that jazz. And again, if you talk to any of the teammates of Oscar Stico and stuff, they say he was a guy you needed to set things up for. Again, he had to feel comfortable. He had to feel like he's in the position where he can operate. You can't just throw him into a game and just expect him to do anything. Yeah. That's a good shout. Let me think. Who else are we going with then? Oh, I'll give you. Here's an obvious one to me, because actually Carrigan had this guy, and it was one of his problem childs. I would have liked later in his career to see him have had Kirby a second time, because Kirby's another guy. Everyone in the Danish scene says this. They all claim he really did have really good skills, and that, you know, they themselves thought when he kept getting chances in North and at the end when he was in Fate, they all thought, you know, eventually he's supposed to actually just break through and become a really good player. But there was always, again, something a bit off with this guy. And I got the vibe, if you saw his interviews, because actually the Kirby interviews by the end got quite depressing. He seemed like he was a bit like out on the game and whatever. In fact, I saw he recently did a whole feature about like mental health or whatever, and how it sort of torn him up, some of the things that happened to him. I always got the vibe he's another person who needed the IGL, who isn't just going to use you in the game well, but they sort of get who you are as a person and what your motivations are. So I think he's another person who never really lived up to his potential. Could have been way better than he was.
The other name I would have probably thrown out there is definitely Twist, although he was like a unique...
The Swedish one we're talking, yeah?
Yeah. He was a unique situation in the sense that he obviously just didn't take the game all that seriously, but he definitely had the raw talent back in the day. I would like to have seen him have a run with like a real IGL and a real team. He left it too late, basically. But I'll just throw one in from NA, and it doesn't fit the lineup. But that wasn't in the purview of the thing. I'll say I would have liked to have seen Kuster. Like, you know, I know you fucking never. No, I'll explain why, right? I'll explain my thinking here. Because obviously, right, he was the big money move. He was like one of the guys that when he joined Team Liquid, everybody was saying, you know, he's going to blow everyone out the water. He was smurfing, he was farming people when he was on enemy, right? And then obviously he just got fucking thrown to the lions. And I mean, literally, you know, if you ever want to see an example, probably how not to fucking bed in a young team, pay attention, G2, because this was the money move of its day, right? You take an unbelievable AWP who's looking great in tier 2, you put him on a lineup and you big him up and you hype him. Team Liquid was saying, this is it now, we're ready for the big time, we're going to win, we've got all the pieces now. And like, it was all on Kuster's back. And of course, obviously, he had a number of significant high profile flops at LAN, you know, on the biggest stages. And it was unbelievably cruel, and it got in his head. And then when you follow that up with like the mad thing, like when he didn't have that kit on that and he fucked up that defuse and all that, like, mate, he had some of the most horrifying failures.
The comedy of errors he had was some outrageous shit, wasn't it? I know.
Yeah. So, and I don't think he was getting a lot of support, frankly, at that point in his career. And listen, when he got on Ghost. Finally, when he was washed and essentially the best years of his career were well behind him, and he got on that Ghost team, which, by the way, Steel just got incredible mileage out of all of the NA Misfits, guys like Wardell. Kuster turned out not only to be the best player on that team, but actually doing it as a rifler. And that was the first time I think he'd worked with an IGL that sort of was really willing to sit down and help construct a game, and he was doing it away from the spotlight. So if Steel could turn Kuster into, you know, a better rifler, if that big money move had happened and he'd gone to a Carrigan team, I don't know.
Here's the thing, jokes aside, you make some valid points, but it's the way you and Moses just like, Kuster, I just can't quit you, man. Like, I don't get the obsession with this one guy. Like, you listen, whatever.
I'll explain it though. The obsession is that at that time, it was kind of, NA was falling into a weird spot with the recycling of talent.
Oh.
Right, and so any young player that was, and you know, there've been all those Pug Stars and stuff like that that had come through, you know, but then like you got this sudden surge of like exciting youngsters, you know, think about Stewie 2K coming out with Splice and stuff like that, and so obviously Kuster, he should have had a great career instead of what he got. It was just that I think the big move came too soon, and there wasn't a support network about how do we fix it when things go bad. It's what we're seeing history repeat itself. We're lucky in things like this, mate. It was young player who's been deemed good enough by the tier 1 gods to come and play, and then you're just thrown in, and you better swim. If you don't, you're fucked, you drown. There's no lifeguards in this pool. That you can't do that.
Also, by the way, I hope people have noticed these two examples are great examples, Lucky and Kuster. The other killer with these stories is, as much as we might talk and laugh at all the young stars who come up, like, funny enough, like the Bobskis of the world, where they think they're just the hottest shit ever when they're on the rise up, and they're all arrogant and the hubris is just preceding them. Listen, I'll take that guy over the guy who's like, oh, golly, I don't know. I don't feel so good, Mr. Sonic. Like, get me that guy out the server immediately. Like, when they don't even believe in themselves, that is what I always check out, Rich. I can't. I've seen too many players where it's like, look, I wish you could be better, but you don't believe it yourself. You're not going to do it, are you? You can just fold. Because that's the other thing. The red flags that these guys are going to collapse when you see them at their first, they're enormous. Like the idea that Astralis themselves are just going to blindly ignore all the problems this lucky guy's had. It's just so irresponsible. Like, how are we going to talk about mental health as a problem and then just make out like that's fine? That's almost like you've reverse engineered how to destroy a young man psychologically. Like, why don't we just take him, put him in the shoes of the greatest player ever from our country, have him play a bunch of his lands, including the major as his first ever LAN, and then after like 6 months just tell him go fuck yourself and just kick him out forever? What the fuck are you doing at this point in time? Like that ain't fun in games anymore, boys. Listen, when you brought Yogi back, he was never supposed to play anyway. Like like both people take an L on that one. You're just going to destroy this guy's career. It's going to be sad because it's going to be like the Kuster scenario for this guy. I expect it's going to take him years to work his way back when he gets booted.
Yeah, and just one more name from me, and then we'll go on to the next question. I think Nex would probably be a good shout.
Oh, the German one, yeah, of course.
I mean, he was a guy
that no one ever unlocked properly.
Yeah. I mean, remember when he first came through, he had those couple of good tournaments. I mean, sure, one was an Ace of Predator Masters, but you know, everyone was like saying, "Oh, this is like the German fucking Scream or something." Like,
his name was German,
yeah, and then just nothing. I don't even know what happened then. Like, so anyway, there you go. Hope that answers your question. We were thorough there. Chingu says, if you could get a True Sight, for those that don't know, True Sight is a documentary series that follows teams at TI for Dota, because Valve enable content for their favorite game. If you could get a True Sight on any team in any tournament, which would you want to see? It can be in any game. Doesn't just have to be Counterstrike.
I mean, the sad thing is, I even made this point, but as usual, CSGO orgs never listen. Why is there nothing like this from the major? Why do I not watch two amazing documentaries of at least Na'Vi and G2 and their route round through the major and all the behind the scenes? Like, imagine if in G2 they were having all discussions about, like, you know, maybe the roster does change, and then they're winning these epic games. Who the fuck doesn't want to see that? Like, it's just stupid we don't have it in esports. So an obvious one would be Na'Vi at the last major. I don't get why, like, even if Valve don't make it, why are the teams themselves not making this content? Like, instead of just making vlogs, mate, just send a cameraman with your team to the big tournament. If they don't do anything, whatever, you chuck the footage away, you do something else with it. If they ever make it, though, you're going to wish you had that camera in the room. It's so stupid that in esports we're missing these stories. Yeah,
I mean, you know, and the worst thing is as well, if you and me wanted to go back and make documentaries, which, spoiler, we'll probably be doing that in 2022 at some point, where is the footage? Where would we go? Exactly. You know? Because, like you said, the teams haven't filmed it, so now we're relying on getting fucking approval from the official broadcasters to use footage people have already seen. You know, like, you have an obligation when your team goes to an event to fucking film what's happening. You would think so. So it's really hard. For me, though, there've been some legendary fucking rosters, obviously. I'll say one, and it's not even about success. I would have just loved a full access fly in the wall documentary of the fucking Bro Science Cloud9 team.
Oh, right. I know the one you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, we're fucking the one that just came out. Oh yeah, we were Wyatt. We were Wyatt the whole time. Adderall the whole time.
Well, let's be real.
Documentary on that fucking
the best
team right
ones would be the ones with the human interest element. So any of the teams where Shox is just a rock and roll star on them, FaZe Clan with Carrigan and fucking Nico, who wouldn't watch these? Like, this is what I don't get as well, Richard. The fucking formula's there. The only reason, like, dude, do you know how many women in my circle magically watch Formula One, Richard, from about like 2 years ago, who never watched a racing sport ever in their life? They would have told you racing sport is the most boring, but when they watch that fucking Netflix shit, it's just like crack to them because it's all the human interest element in it, and you get to follow the story. And in the same way with all those talent shows, you get to see the guy who's the plucky up and comer, and can he beat the other guy? Like, the joke is, why aren't we doing that in esports?
It's a huge breakout like the last few years, like, and especially now
in esports.
Yeah, we need it. Totally. Well, I mean, look, I've said this as well, like many times. We're an industry that's still niche, even though we're being told it's mainstream. I've said it a lot. I can see analogs with like other sports, like Formula One and UFC. I still think the thing we're closest to is, funnily enough, wrestling. in the sense that it's so niche and there are so many things you can only understand by working in the business. And all of the stories and all of the fuck ups and the party culture and the fact that we are away from the cameras and stuff. But it's like they had their shit together super early doors. There's cameras everywhere. Everything's filmed. Everything's archived. Everything's backed up. Yes. They have their own streaming platforms, you know, rival promotions that all contribute to the ecosystem in some meaningful way. Because even WWE understands that, you know, you can't just fucking destroy like local promotions or they're your talent farms, for fuck's sake. You know, so I mean, and put it this way: I'm not saying Vince McMahon's a good guy; he's a piece of shit. But you know, the reality is, like, it's even got a better defined ecosystem. Like, you know, the big fish in the water. So yeah, for me, I don't know. There's a ton of teams that we didn't get, and a ton of teams in multiple games. But yeah, I'm like you. I would want the human interest one. So all the teams that were quirky. I'll also just throw this out there in case Chingu hasn't seen it. Moses and the Room on Fire guys, they did one for the Boost Gate.
Yes.
You know, Olaf Pass, and that was really good. And I thought that was going to be a series, but it just never materialized. So. Shine asks, out of the 4 seasons, which season is your favourite season and what is your least favourite?
I mean, I think for this one, I probably have a unique one because I'm someone who, listen, I did actually, especially when I went to Korea, because you have to, I learned to actually appreciate when it's sunny and to enjoy it and stuff. But I used to be one of those people, especially because I was a nerd and I live in the UK, I used to hate with the summer. So generally, it would usually be autumn for me. I think I just vibe with it more. It's still beautiful. Still got the winter hasn't come and ravaged everything yet. You got all those beautiful reds and greens and I'm colourblind, so it's all the same to me. It's all fucking brown or whatever. And then people are just wearing scarves, having fucking cocoa and shit. It's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm a big winter guy. I like winter. The problem is you don't get real winters anymore. You know, I miss the days of like 6 foot of snow going out. You know, yeah, I like winter, and funnily enough, I'm not really a summer guy anyway. Like, sort of when I was younger, you know, summer used to be like, you know. I guess I don't know if Sam will be able to back me up on this. Like when you live in Wales, you only really get like 2 weeks of summer anyway.
Not since global warming's been warming everything up.
Yeah, now obviously. Yeah, but obviously I'm talking about mate. You get a summer in fucking November now, don't you? But back in the day when I was growing up, it used to be like 2 weeks of barbecue weather and then go fuck yourself. So I never really vibed with summer. It was just for those 2 weeks were mega because everyone would be out like fucking hell, bud. Come and have a fucking burger, bud. Everyone's having a barbecue on the street, like, you know, and everyone gets pissed up, and then you know all day drinking is suddenly normalized again. Even at work, I used to work for the fucking gas board. Even at work, they'd let you have a beer in the summer. Like, just in the office.
Listen, of all the jobs, it seems inappropriate to allow to have alcohol. It'd probably work for the gas board. You know?
Yeah.
The house is going to blow up and kill them all if you don't do this job right.
No. I mean, I wasn't installing meters on it.
There we go, okay.
But like, you know, I was just working in the office. I used to do debt collection for the Welsh gas board. So basically, they used to just let us have a beer in the office in the summer if it was hot, crack the windows and have a couple of cold ones in the office, you know. But so yeah, I mean, summer was good, but it just sucks now. It just feels like a grueling, remorseless heat and sweat, and it's only got worse because they seem to just last forever now, you know. Jerky's Minion. Out of these 3 CS pros, who would survive the longest in Wrexham?
Come on, it's gonna be like fucking Dorsey or something. Come on, hit me with the 3 names. Come on.
Wrexham, with that notorious hotbed of.
By the way, give me the premise there. Obviously, he's naming that because it's like a British style of joke, like Wrexham, because it's just some shit all place. Right? What's the relevance to that? Just nobody.
Well, no, because I've talked a lot about how rough Wrexham is. Obviously, me and Sam, like, you know, basically, like the anecdote I told on a way back when in a classic Richard Lewis show episode back when me and Sam used to do them was where I was talking about how like it's one of the only times I've seen someone just shit in front of me. Like, I was coming out of a club in Wrexham, and there was literally just a woman having a shit in front of me, like, as I'm walking to go back to my mate's house for a house party, and she's just like, yep, just doing the toilet business. Like, it was the most fucking normal thing in the world. So, anyone who's been a long-term viewer, right,
who are the three players we're going with there?
Right, so the 3 players are Device, Kenny S, or Nico. So, first of all,
he's picked some fucking sensitive players there. None of them are going to survive. They're all dead.
I'm going to tell you this. It's too easy, that one. It is Nico, 100%. Nico can handle Wrexham, no doubt. No doubt.
He can't even handle just losing a major fight. He's going to handle people having shits in front of him.
No, but it's the thing. Nico's got a bit of street smarts about him. He does. Device and Kenny are going to be like horrified.
I guess Nico's put up with Nexus shit in the bed for 2 years, so probably should be part of the course. Everyone's shitting themselves. Oh, whatever. I'm Nico. There we go. By the way, Device wouldn't last 5 seconds there.
No.
If he's crying when Cole's era's like talking to him in nightclubs. First of all, he comes from a Nordic country. He's just used to a higher standard of living, mate. You have to understand that. Kenny S. He's just French, and so I don't know how he's going to handle fucking. I'd just say don't speak, Kenny. Just pretend to be mute. It's not going to be good. Yeah, it probably is Nico, isn't it? Nico would probably be so pissed he wouldn't even notice what he's.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Hunter!
He's in on.
Some age he's going to do an Adrian type one. Hunter! Get in the gangbang now! Whatever.
He's in on the drinking culture in Wrexham as well. So yeah, it's too easy, Jerky. That's Nico all day. Echo says, do you think the extinction of dinosaurs was an inside job by Big Meteor? Here's a question for you, because I know Echo just likes to ask dinosaur questions, because I think he only understands dinosaurs. But is it true, fully established? Is the meteor theory?
No, that's just a theory.
It is just a theory.
Yeah. It's like
not, if I ask that, I'm not like denying evolution or anything mental.
No, put it this way. I mean, it goes without saying, like, there's no actual like hard body of evidence that proves that a meteor came and wiped out life. That's what they just speculate. And again, we're talking about such a massive amount of time in the past. Like, again, I don't even know what evidence you would have for something like this. It's sort of inferred by like.
Well, there's a crater, isn't there? They say they've identified the crater or something. I think I remember reading that, but. I think
it's less so the meteoric impact itself, more so the impact on the environment. So, like, the meteor hit changed the surrounding environment by so much that dinosaurs can no longer. It's not like they all literally got hit by a meteor. That is
so if T-Rex had just driven a Tesla, might still be alive now. Whatever. Fuck everyone who believes any of that shit.
I'm always interested in how they sort of come up with like these theories that pass into, common acceptance. Reykjavik on Steam. Now that ESL have got into the NFT markets, I forgot to mention that.
I forgot about that, yeah, true.
When I was doing the Louvre agreement story. Shit, I meant to bring that up. Anyway, now that ESL have got into the NFT markets for the teams in the Louvre agreement, how long until we get ESL penny stocks? Well,
what's wild is I was told
penny stocks
for the last month, Richard, based on a piece of content you did, I was told that anyone involved in NFTs is a scammer and a piece of shit. So logically, Richard, I know how fans were with Flashpoint holding us accountable. All CSGO fans must no longer be watching ESL events now, because I mean Henry G, the just scum of the earth, isn't he, for doing something that isn't in any way a scam as far as he's doing it, but because other people can scam, that makes him a scam. But the sad thing about all those topics, mate, is it's always the people who know the least who have all the opinions. It's just garbage, isn't it? I will say ESL hasn't done it because they know what they're talking about. They are just the boomers, like, get me Mr. NFT. No, it's a technology. Get him. Get it then. Get it and put our stuff on NFTs. Well, it's just pictures and that. Then put pictures we have on there. Yeah, but what pictures would it be though? I don't know. Whatever the kids are into. Like, you could imagine some fucking boomer like Fly DJ's just done that, and he.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, listen, it's one of those things where it's like, I think the technology actually as well, by the way, there's an interview with the guys that sort of came up with the idea initially. And they said we'd been up for days, like trying to spitball ideas, and frankly, this is it's terrible. It's a terrible idea. It doesn't really serve the function. So it's like I'm skeptical about all of that nonsense. But there's one area where I am super interested in it, and I think it could have some sort of value, and that's the one everyone's currently banging on right now. Because obviously NFT's bad, totally bad. I think they're garbage, and I think people who do them are generally sort of must know on some level. It's almost like your fool's gold, right? Like it's like that, or snake oil to a degree. I guarantee most people that buy NFTs don't really understand what they're doing. Put it this way, I've got a mate, right, who works as a landscaper, and he's like been augmenting his finance. He goes, I'm flipping NFTs. I'm like, do you even know what they're? Funny enough, he's called Sam as well. And I said, Sam, do you even know what the fuck they are? He's like, no, but I've made $3,000 extra this month by doing it. So, it's like people are there, people are dabbling, people are experimenting. But for me, where it could work, where it could have some utility, is in games. And funnily enough, even though Valve have sort of banned NFTs off the Steam platform, they are sort of the progenitors of what a gaming NFT could look like. Everyone's saying NFT shouldn't be in games. I sort of like the idea of, like, if I play and commit to a game, I could generate some value. Like, you remember when drops used to be in Dota, you know, and stuff like that. So, you know,
as a mechanism, I think it's a very clever idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think there could be something in that. I don't think it's been expressed particularly well. And what you're seeing is you see a ton of games that happened with Stalker 2. You know, they come out and they say, we're going to put NFTs in our game. Rejoice, everyone. And then people are like, no, we really hate NFTs across the board. And then they go, we're taking NFTs out our game. Rejoice, everyone. That's what they just did. You know, and then you've got fucking, you know, perennial con artist Peter Molyneux is saying, nope, I'm running NFT. Getting like, fucking hell, mate. But, you know, but I think there could be something there. So I don't know about penny stocks, but NFTs aren't going to go away until they've been milked to the last drop. And certainly in esports, any scam business is going to flourish in esports because it is itself a scam business run by scammers. Lonnie, who has slower rotations, Jame or Dozier?
They're definitely the shortlist, put it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, the joke is some of them just weren't a rotation. It's like, well, I'm not going.
Yeah, exactly. With Jame is just, I'm not going. And Dozier was just, what?
I'll walk slightly towards the side, then turn around. So, yeah.
Where, you know, the bomb's down, it's ticking, he's the last one alive. Where's bomb? You know, he's just like an E. So, probably Jame, though. Because at least Dozier, on some level, understands that he has to rotate. James doesn't want to. BP420, who is or are your favourite YouTubers?
Oh, so he just means in any context whatsoever.
Yeah. Like, who do you watch?
I mean, I've got to say, if we're just going to talk about sheer amount of hours watched and enjoyment, listen, he's not technically a YouTuber anymore. It would have been Joe Rogan probably. I just think about how many. I put it this way: at the beginning, I watched them all, like probably the first 100, 200, or whatever. After that, I did like everyone. There's so many. I used to just pick the guests, but like consistency-wise, mate, what a mega podcast he's had over the years. Got to be one of the top 5 of all time.
Yeah. So I've got a list, and I'll sort of separate them into like areas. So, and I'll just say the names, and I might elaborate on one or two. But in games, obviously, like everybody you'll know sort of the big few. Like Mandalore Gaming is fucking sick. His stuff's great. It's one called Accursed Farms, but particularly Ross's Game Dungeon. They're absolutely sick. So I like all the retro gaming one. Obviously, Seth Saintsatch, or whatever the fuck you say it. He's fucking wicked. Joseph Anderson, obviously, although we're all just waiting on the Witcher 3 video, which is probably never coming. So how relevant that is. But then ones you might not have heard of as much. There's a guy called Ragnarox with an X, Ragnarox. He's absolutely sick. He specifically does like horror games. And then there's a guy, he's criminally underrated and has criminally few followers and subscribers, and that's a guy called Grimbeard, and he does the same. He does like retro horror games. It's a bit niche, but not all horror. He's fucking absolutely sick. And he's got like 5 or 6 years of content. That's a rabbit hole definitely worth going down. Over in movies, I think let me see. Red Letter Media, I think they don't need any introduction. Everyone follows them. Ralph the Movie Maker, I like as well. I think his stuff's really good. And then the other one, like a little sleeper that people might not follow, is George Rockel-Schmidt. Track him down. He does really good film theory and critique, but recently he's moved into talking about like scams and stuff like that. And then just general, Wang with an exclamation point. Love that guy. He's basically like internet historian. All of the weird, obscure shit, like, you know, the man posting his fucking cum box on Reddit and stuff like that. All of the 4chan era stuff, all stuff that's being memory holed in real time. Wang does videos about that stuff, and they're really good, really put together, little bite-sized chunks of internet. I like Razor Fist as well, the Rageaholic. He does politics, but he does games and other stuff. His stuff's really well produced, really well scripted. The strength is in the scripts and the delivery. And yeah, you go one more. Matthew Colville. who is a D&D guy, but he also does game design. And I like listening to it. He does a series called Running the Game where he talks about game theory. It's really interesting to sort of understand how games get made. So I have pretty eclectic taste and watch loads of YouTubers. But
I'll give you one niche one then. If you want a music one, there's one guy called Naked Flames. Just look up like sleep mix. And he did loads of these mixes I used to use when I used to go on planes, where he takes like ambient music, something like Autech or Aphex or something. Takes the most ambient tracks they did and he just makes them into a mix that you could listen while going to sleep. Like no like aggressive beats or like sound out of nowhere. And it's all mixed like perfectly together so you can just sort of drift off. So it's just mega stuff to have in the background if you play.
Oh, Sissy Hypno.
Want to chill out. None of that, sadly.
Right. There's edits. When speaking with almost anyone about IGLs, we will very often hear the term system get thrown around. We even threw it around this episode. Could you take the top few all-time great leaders in CSGO and compare and contrast how these systems functioned beyond X, Y, and Z? IGL plus coach was a tactical / loose. I don't understand the last bit, but basically, different systems across different IGLs. The obvious one for this is if you want an example of a system IGL, it's MSL. I think he's the most obvious one. And where he differs from every other IGL I've ever seen, and keep in mind, I've had the pleasure of watching him work, is he comes up with a playbook. Then he has, for each play in the playbook, he has the fake version of that play within the playbook. That's his foundational aspects. And it's so micromanaged that it's like an NFL playbook. That's how MSL structures his teams. There is mid-round calling to it, but at the start of a round, he wants where he gets frustrated is if a round breaks down because somebody wasn't where they were supposed to be. Think like a wide receiver running a route and they're not there and you've thrown the ball because you're expecting them to be there. That's like his approach tactically. Another really good example of this was Existence, very similar. He was the first IGL I ever saw back in the Source days that turned up with like an iPad, a tablet, and what he used to do. Because obviously he worked with some players who, again, I'm not trying to be rude, but he worked with players who weren't very cerebral, let's say. And so what he would do is he would record videos of what they did. And he would show them so they could like visualize when X happens, go here, throw the flash from this angle, do that. And he would just play them the videos and then sort of annotate it with his notes. And obviously one of the best system IGLs. I mean, think about all the successive Very games that he had coming into CSGO. And then basically Very games just couldn't get one over on NIP. They were just too good at that time. But, Existence, one of the great system IGLs, and the methods they used were very rigid. So when that's what I think of when I think of system IGLs, basically.
I know what he means. What he means is he doesn't want us to just do like the one sentence version where you just say like FaZe is a loose team and Carrigan just mid rounds. He wants like more detail. Yeah. So the example I would give you would be this. I'll give you one for Carrigan. So in his actual FaZe clan lineups, the good ones, not the recent one. One of the things I think is very misunderstood is he doesn't just literally order mid round. He doesn't just say nothing. Yeah. People go on the map and then just go here instead. What he does is it's more like his tactics are all built up so that in theory you can't guess from the base beginning of the tactic where they're going. Because he builds it up like that, so you have uncertainty, even if you're making information plays as the CTs, and he might have like 3 flash and smoke initial beginnings to a round that can then go into anything he wants. It can go into a reverse back to the site, it can go into you hit that site but just staggered, or maybe it's not even a fake, you just go in with those first flashes, etc. Then the other thing I'll say is this, because people only know Carrigan in the FaZe clan teams mainly, and they think he was already a mouse, he was kicked out. When he was in the old TSM/Astralis team, he also on the CT side had a very interesting approach, which is because he had such an incredible level of skill across the team. They used to basically just play inside the sites, and they didn't actually do a lot of invasion plays. They just let you come in the site, and their logic was if you're going to win a site that has KGB and Device on, or you're going to the other site that has Dupree and fucking like they're gonna beat you, mate. Like they've just got these skills where they'll just win those fights. So again, that was actually quite unique compared to in-game leaders of the day. They had their own flair to it,
Yeah. Barv, which CSGO personality would you cast to play the Grinch in a BTN remake of the Festive Classic?
Is that even a fucking question? Surely I've got that fucking role nailed.
I was going to say it is you, isn't it?
It's just me, isn't it? I've always thought the only bad part of the Grinch movie is why does he just join with them at the end? You won. You destroyed Christmas, you daft cunt. Just sit back and enjoy your handiwork.
You did it. You destroyed Christmas. Yeah, enjoy it. Yeah, no, fair enough. I mean, yeah, it would be you. It just would be you, unfortunately. Like, there's no even further elaboration. You know, Bacon, considering you are both...
If anyone wants proof of this, just go and look up an episode. It was a show I did with Loco Doco. It's called Listen Loco. And the episode you're looking for is with a guy called Golden Glue. And this is a guy who was just like an average LCS level player, right? And he was the backup to Jensen, one of the best mid laners in LCS. And he wanted to one day be the starter for a team like Cloud9. And he foolishly on this show basically just asked me, like, but Thorin, you're not just going to tell me to my face I'm bad, are you? And I'm just sort of like, yeah. And they just go look it up. I just give him like a 5-minute download of like, you're just not going to make it, mate. Like, I wish you the best, but it's just not going to happen for you, is it? Like, that's just who I am. I don't give a fuck. I'm not going to give someone false hope. Like, you could make it. No, you're dead in the water. Just give it up. Just quit. You little bitch.
So, a last question, the penultimate question. First, Sock, who is your second best player of 2021? Obviously,
okay.
Yeah, it was Simple's number one. It should have been Shiro.
Interesting combo. Yeah, there's a lot we can go. That you can go Shiro, you can go Ziwu, you can go Nico. I think that's an interesting one because to me, what I like about this discussion is it's not really like there should be a consensus. In my opinion, it just tells you what you look for in the game. Like I could see any of those players being legit. I think people, by the way, recency bias is making people forget the Gambit players altogether. Mate. Like the idea Shiro can't even be in contention. Listen, I know we're going to give Lance more precedent, but the majority of the year was online and its numbers are unbelievable. So yeah, I think any of those names, take your pick. You can pick any of them. I might go at the moment. I'm kind of feeling maybe Ziwu. I might still go Ziwu. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's funny actually. I don't know if it is a type of bias in my brain. I'm not vibing with Ziwu at all as being the second. Actually, I think if we value online, which I know we don't, and I don't, but if we do, and we sort of have to for the purposes of creating a list, it should be Shiro. If I let recency bias infect my brain, it's unquestionably Nico.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So, for me, I think it has to be one of those two and not Ziwu at all. Now, and then the question becomes, is Ziwu even third then?
Right? Logic, maybe he's fourth, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure if we go... Here's the thing as well. Like, this is the problem with the HLTV list because it's purely statistically driven. And so it doesn't factor in things like online, and it doesn't factor in, basically what your rating is over the year largely dictates where you'll fall on that list. Not all of it, right? There are, like tournaments won and stuff like that, and time in the top 10 ranking, I think, is another factor. But yeah, for me, I'm sure Ziwu stats have been lights out over the course of the year. And I seem to recall there was a period right at the start of the year where he was playing absolutely out of his mind. But Vitality fucking fell off a cliff and did fuck all. And so it's like a super good player in a failing team for me falls further down my mental list than somebody that's playing well in a team that's actually winning tournaments, be them online or not. I don't care if that guy down here has higher stats. So I would definitely put Shiro above Ziwu, and then Nico, as I said, the last 3 months, he's up there with Simple. So, I don't know. I think it's an interesting one. Obviously, Simple wins, but I think the top 5 is going to be super interesting this year. Here we go. Bacon, considering you are gamers and 80s film fans, do you ever listen to synthwave? I don't.
Not really. I mean, the sad thing is, in theory, I think I would sort of be into that sort of music, but I've just never found any good examples. Like the sort of shit I came across just wasn't that great. Basically, it's the sort of music like the soundtrack of the movie Drive, essentially.
I was just going to say, yeah. So, I mean, here's what I'll say as well. Because I rewatched Drive recently, because I've always sort of, in my mind, I've always thought it was a massively overrated film.
It was pretty shit, actually, as a film.
Yeah. But I rewatched it, and I approached it because it was years later and there wasn't all that critical acclaim. And actually, it's a good movie and the soundtrack's great apart from that fucking Human Being song, which is one of the worst songs. Have you actually looked at the lyrics for that?
Oh, of course not.
No, mate.
Here's the problem, Richard. This is the problem that movie has. The first 15 minutes is amazing, and then the rest of the movie's nothing like that.
Yeah.
If the movie had been what the first 15 minutes is, he's a guy doing like basically like bank heists and stuff, or whatever it might be. That looked fucking it looked like some modern day fucking French Connection or something. The rest of the movie was just some wonky shite about him and that fucking woman or whatever. Like, why is the psycho guy?
No, but that's the thing, because it was set up to me when I first saw it, and it was like, oh, it's a heist movie. Well, it's not a heist movie, right? It's a movie about a guy who happens to do heists in a sort of, it's closer to an action movie in some areas. It's not like some sort of complex, it's not like a French Connection or Thief or anything like that, right? It doesn't stand adjacent to those at all. So, but it is its own thing, and I do appreciate it. But I just hate that Real Human Being song with a passion. It's one of the worst songs I've ever heard. Like, look at it. Check out this lyric. This is a verse, right? A pilot on a cold, cold morn, 155 people on board, all safe and all rescued from the slowly sinking ship, right? And then it says that the guy who did that is a real human being and a real hero. What's that? Like, I understand you can have abstract lyrics, like, in a film. What's that got to do with a cunt who drives cars? It's fucking trash. It's absolute garbage. And unfortunately as well, I like the director, Winding Refn, or however you say it, but that song's used like 3 times in the fucking movie to show when he's having a moment of he is a real, yeah, I know, for fuck's sake, please, like. So yeah, that really put me off synthwave just as a genre. So right, that's it. Show's over, fuck. Show's over, scumbags. So one final shout out to the sponsors. Obviously, if you want a VPN, go to nordvpn.com/RLS, 74% off a VPN. Support them because they support us. And of course, if you want to pick up some SteelSeries peripherals, go and do it by going to the SteelSeries store. You can use ! SteelSeries in this chat. It's just flashed up courtesy of Nightbot, and you can type in my name with no space, Richard Lewis, and you will get 10% off anything in the store. And of course, now a shout out to all of our patrons. $100 patrons: Benakagi, Carve, Cathal, J-Dubs, Jerky's Minion, Kurza Edits, Marcus Kiumpar, Michael, Tobias Bernasconi, Will the Weed Wrangler, and our $50 patrons: Adam Ox, Alex C, A-Rammer, Bacon, Can of Pasito, Chronic Alcoholic, CMAC 1991, Dancer Master, Echo, Fursock, Gerhan Kaya, John P, Judas, Miss Alcoholic, Nolan, Atarian, Reykjavik on Steam, Sard Sawar, Shine, The Bear, Bitcoin Cash Podcast, Tim Frost, Lonnie, Watch Doge, Zumba, and Zarathenia. That was By the Numbers. We'll see you for the final show of the year, whenever that will be. And until then, take care of yourself. Bye.